Out of the gates and ready to go. Outkick 360. Friday edition is here from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The crew is all here and many more in studio with us the Friday before the long weekend. Happy July 4th weekend to everyone listening or watching across today's show. Jam-packed one. It includes Josh Pate. Late Kick Josh will be with us a bit later in the show. He was out in Los Angeles as early as yesterday. He was out there for Elite 11 and was out there as everything went down with the Pac-12 and conference expansion to the Big Ten between USC and UCLA. Josh Pate joins us in hour number 3 today. In the middle of all of it is a lot of litigation, both in college and NFL avenues. And Amy Dash will join us from Odyssey. She's the legal analyst there. That's in hour number 2. Coming up in 20 minutes, Bobby Carpenter will join us to talk from a Big Ten perspective, the addition of USC, UCLA, and much more. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
What a day, boys. What a day. What a day to be alive going into the long 4th of July weekend, but also you walk around 6th and Peabody here, and everyone that I spoke to before the show, first thing they said was, not a slow time of year for you guys with the news yesterday. Business really picking up with the USC, UCLA news from yesterday, which we know a year ago was Texas, Oklahoma. That precipitated this move now. Now, what does this trigger for the SEC or other conferences? This is just another domino of many to fall. So this is the first of a lot of news to come.
So much speculation about who goes where now, what happens next, the ultimate look of 2 super conferences or 3. And Deshaun Watson verdict, I should have tried to bet money with you, Chad, because I had a strong feeling it wouldn't be today, and it's not because they're taking briefs now from both sides. It seems weird to me that there's another stage to this, but it's going to be decided before July 26th instead of July 4th.
If it's up to Sue Robinson, which it is, that she wants to receive briefs from both sides, they have 3 business days to present those briefs to the judge. However, it appears she's going on vacation or something, and she's had this week off because instead of 3 business days, she has requested that they be turned in on July 11th and not next Tuesday, which would be the deadline going into Wednesday for the briefings to be on her desk.
So the date now is July 26th, presumably, when the vast majority of the league reports for camp or starts camp. Reports 26, starts 27th, I think. And they would really like to have it finished by then. I would think that's a target date, though she's not necessarily operating within their parameters.
No, doesn't have to by any means. You're right. Here's the other thing to watch for and what others will now begin to put out there over the weekend and as they start to really dig into what's going to happen with all this. If he is suspended for the season initially, he will not be allowed to be at training camp or anywhere around the facility, because if it's a full season or indefinite, then he's off the field immediately. If he is suspended for, hypothetically, 8 weeks, that would go to appeal. He would be at training camp. He could practice all the way up until the week one preparation. So he will be at training camp. He'll be on the field for the Browns. And he could actually return to the field. Let's say it's upheld that it's an 8-week situation. He could return for he could not practice. He could return to the facility for meetings starting week 5, the week of week 5, halfway through, based on the collective bargaining agreement. He can't practice. He can't throw a football. He can't receive coaching. But he can show up and go to meetings, offensive and meetings behind the scenes.
And work out on site.
Work out on site starting halfway through the suspension. So there is a big difference between indefinite full season type hand down and anything less than that. Anything less than that, his contract does not toll, and he can return 50% of the way into it, plus be a part of training camp.
What do we know about the money if the contract does toll and if he's suspended indefinitely? That's the question I haven't really found an answer to.
I have. So he, based on the language in his contract, he is protected mightily through all this. So the bonuses remain intact. The $1.2 million or whatever it is that's on the books
base
right now, his base salary, would toll to next year, but the count against the cap would remain whatever it is projected to be right now. It's not like you pause it and move forward. It rolls back a year. The biggest hindrance for Deshaun Watson is he's not a free agent after 2026. It would move back to 2027. Right. But there's no financial penalty, really. It's just that your contract's pushed back, so it doesn't make as much. There is language in this where the average player, I think it's common knowledge amongst the media and those covering the league, or if you're knee-deep in all this, if you've had a player on your favorite team that gets suspended for a season or a certain amount of time, it's the base salary, but the team can also go back and get part of the signing bonus. There's language in his contract that prevents the Browns from doing that. So they have completely handcuffed themselves with this in order for Watson to sign with the Browns, which it's really hard to find any financial pitfall for him other than the base salary. And then, of course, it's a weekly deal where I think it's like $56,000 per week if he's suspended for 8 weeks. It's 1/18 of the season is how you would divide the money.
So if he loses the full season, he's not taking any big financial hit.
He just doesn't. Maybe even less. He doesn't become the free agent after 2026. He's a year older at that point.
But he's still getting the $230 guaranteed.
Yeah. And there would be some cap
implications
for the Browns that could help them next year a little bit, but it's not like it's a ton of money out of the Brown or out of Watson's pocket.
So the punishment, as we've discussed, money versus games, is all games.
Yeah.
In that situation, it's all games.
And here's a player who hasn't played in this scenario 2 full seasons and has made $55 million doing so in new money. Made $10 million last year because the league wouldn't suspend him, and now that they will suspend him, he's going to make 46 or whatever it was. That's a part of the signing bonus that's fully guaranteed right now. Now, he has not been paid that bonus money yet. He gets paid. The first one, I believe, is coming up July 31st in a $15 million direct deposit. He gets another one that will happen in late fall, early winter. And then the third installment happens in March of next year of the signing bonus that he signed on for this year.
And one of the chief opinionists, I don't know if we want to get into this now, Mike Florio, waffling on this, and one proposal that I thought was ridiculous. And I thought this would come up. I thought it would come up stronger and earlier. His idea was to take last year, count it as suspension, add 8 games to it, have him pay back the $10 million that he made last year while he sat out those games. And then count it like as a 17 plus 8, a 25-game suspension, and call it that. Have him pay. So a more financially hurtful settlement because he'd pay back the 10.2 he made last year, and then he'd lose, half of the 1.2 this year. So at least there'd be a financial knock with it. But I think, and we'd hash this out at another point. Early on, I thought there was potential that the league would do that. That went away quickly, the idea of time served. That clearly was not a suspension. I think that's a foolish idea at this point, and I don't think it's in play. I think it's a wacky Florio idea to go back and retroactively call that a suspension when we were all watching video of the guy on the side field.
So would you guys like to hear the language that the Browns put in his contract?
Yes, please.
I pulled this up from an article I was reading last month. Quote, a suspension by the NFL solely in connection with matters disclosed to club in writing pursuant to paragraph 42, which results in players' unavailability to clubs solely for games during the 2022 or 2023 NFL years, shall not subject player to forfeiture of signing bonus.
Unbelievable. I mean, they just basically laid down and said, you go write the contract. And will sign.
But
it was a reverse contract.
The sad part for the Browns is that's what they felt like they had to do to get the guy to go.
Oh, it's absolutely what they had to do.
He didn't want to go to Cleveland. This is what they did to say, well, this is what it'll take to get this quarterback who's under immense scrutiny from the league and legally right now to want to play for our professional football team, is to give him the world. And that's it. If not, he's wanting to go to these other places.
And really, Chad, that's mostly about what? It's mostly about weather and wind, because the teams he was looking at,
you're right,
are all worse than the Cleveland Browns in terms of roster. Atlanta, way worse. Carolina, way worse. Who was the other one? Washington?
The whole thing.
I mean, Seattle was interested, but he wouldn't even consider
But those
them.
final 4 that Cleveland, or 5 that Cleveland was first out of, is a better franchise. It's hard to say because the Browns have been so bad for so long. But right now, with Stefanski coaching them and the roster that they have, it really was the best option. The thing that made it worse is that it's cold and windy.
Setting the legal stuff aside and everything else going on around Deshaun Watson, there are some red flags here about him as a competitor and player within this. And that's one of them.
Well, his willingness not to play last year, too, is
Willingness
one of
not to
them.
play an entire season. And also, you're going to cross an NFL team off your list because of weather?
Geography, yeah.
Do you want to win or not? I mean, is this about where your condo faces the east and the sun comes in at the right direction and you've got a comfortable temperature when you walk around outside? Or do you want to win a damn Super Bowl?
I mean, a lot of good quarterbacks have played in,
I have a hard
Green
time.
Bay
I mean,
and Boston.
this is
Whatever his
where-
excuse was, it worked.
This is where I'd probably be terrible at, wooing a football player to come play for my team if I'm in on a meeting at any point with them. Because if I know I have the stronger football team for the immediate future, I got a hard time not telling a guy if I'm in Cleveland or Buffalo or Kansas City or wherever, just go. Like, go fail with the Panthers. Leave. Get out of my office. GTFO.
Yeah.
We don't need you. We don't want you. If you're not the type of person, if you're going to sit here and tell me the wind is a reason you're not going to come play for my team, I sure as hell am not writing that contract up for him. That's going to give him whatever he wants to come to your team.
Yeah, because look at.
I hope
I'd
Tyler
say-
Castle, our resident Browns fans, is fired up as I am
I'd
about
say
this.
look at Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen in their circumstances. They're doing just fine. They're making a ton of money.
Exactly.
They're making a ton of marketing money. And half the league, by the way, isn't in Miami. Isn't in these
half the league's
luxury
playing
cities
in a dome, though.
that you want. Yeah, that's true.
But again, I mean, he's talking about the Texans. I was never going to win big with the Texans. How many divisions did they win when he was there?
Yeah.
And where did he want to go again? Miami? Because they've done so much winning? This isn't about winning.
Right.
This is about Deshaun Watson
Comfort.
going where he wants
Comfort
and
and
being
money.
comfortable. And I mean, red flag, red flag, red. I think he's a great player. And he has produced when he's been eligible and played. Red flag, red flag, red flag. This is not going to end well for Cleveland.
That said, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan and you've watched that jersey on the front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, or on their website for years and years with the 17 quarterbacks, pinned down the back, if you could set aside the legal stuff, which is hard to do, and you say this guy's a damn good quarterback, and I'm glad my team, setting aside this stuff, finally went and did whatever it takes to get a guy who I know is going to be good.
Well, keep this in mind, too. 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago now? It was 2020, September of 2020, or was it 2019? 2020. Right as they're going into week 1, the Texans practically gave Watson the same type of treatment to keep him happy. And then the following off seasons, whenever he demanded, he wanted out. Right before week 1 of September 2020, they gave him a 4-year, $160 million extension with a no-trade clause, meaning he got to approve wherever he went.
So let's recount what went.
So he got the signing bonus in September, and by December, the final game where the Texans nearly beat the Titans, where the Titans had to win that game to win the division for the first time in how many years? Sloman
13.
hit a kick off the upright that won the game. And that was the game. That was Watson's final game as a Houston Texan. And that was 4 months after they gave him a 4-year extension with a big signing bonus for $160 million total with a no-trade clause. They bowed down to him, too. And then months later, he said, I'm out. I want to be traded. David Culley sat in here on Monday and told us he knew from the first Zoom call with the guy that he wasn't going to play. And now you've had all the legal ramifications. So we should also throw the Texans in the mix here, too. The Texans did the same thing. At the time, it's based solely on the talent of this player, and that's what the Browns just did, too, solely based on the talent. The Texans wanted to keep him, did so, and rightfully so. He's a top 5 guy just based on sheer play that was on a really bad team. and he re-signed for the money and still wasn't happy because of the organizational
Yeah, let's
failures.
revisit what went south there. I mean, it was the end of O'Brien, yes?
It was O'Brien's final year.
All right. O'Brien getting the GM ship certainly was the thing that fractured the franchise. He traded DeAndre Hopkins for nothing. That was a disaster. So was it just the general direction of the team that had Watson so upset that in a matter of months he went from signing a long-term contract to wanting out?
I'm
just trying to remember.
Yeah, there were just rumblings of the final week that he was not happy with the direction of the front office. And
understandably,
keep in mind they had just traded DeAndre Hopkins for scraps at the table in return.
Bad running back.
His best receiver's gone.
Return.
Yeah, they get David Johnson in return, but David Johnson hasn't done anything. And then they end up that season firing Bill O'Brien. Romeo Crennel was the interim head coach going into Week 17 on a 4-win team with a top 5 quarterback. And he had just signed an extension, and his top wide receiver's gone, and the organization, the direction that he wanted, wasn't there.
Typically,
it's a bizarre setting considering the extensions that we see at quarterback and how you generally don't see it end months later.
Typically, that guy would be able to assert some power in the direction of the franchise from there. And that's where the Easterby and the overbearing Caserio and all that stuff comes. And it's an inept franchise at that point. I think if it had been a more normal franchise and included him, you don't let him hire the coach, but you include him in conversations about the direction of the franchise and all of that stuff. You try to repair things quickly after he's frustrated at the end of the season. And he's a more reasonable guy that settles down better. Yes, you're frustrated at the end of the season. You go away for a couple weeks to Cabo and you come back and you're like, all right, let's piece this thing back together, which is what most leader quarterbacks do. It fractured on both ends to an unreasonable degree. You're right. That's the beginning of him getting all this hand.
Yes.
Too much hand.
He's had it since.
He's had the most hand of anybody.
And he has not played a game since then. Coming up, Bobby Carpenter joined us. A lot to discuss with B-Carp on what is happening with the Big Ten expansion, USC, UCLA, what it means for the Pac-12, what the Big 12 now does moving forward, and how about the ACC, SEC? We discuss it all with Bobby Carpenter next on Outkick 360. Outkick 360 rolls on with one of our favorite guests each and every week, Bobby Carpenter. You can follow him on Twitter at BCarp3. You can catch him on SiriusXM, as well as up in Columbus, talking some radio and sports radio, that is, and plenty to talk about right now as he joins us from his parents' home in a backdrop that I believe has a senior photo of one Bobby Carpenter over his left shoulder. Bobby, good to see you, man.
Oh, it's great to see you guys. Yeah, I was trying to find a good angle that gets light, have everything set up the right way. And I was trying to get one behind me. My dad's got all his trophies and game balls. And he's got all his trophies and game balls all over the place. So, unfortunately, I couldn't get that arranged. So the best I guess you're going to get is a senior picture of maybe me or one of my brothers back there.
Your thought, but this time last year, whenever Texas and Oklahoma was beginning to be all of the discussion right before SEC Media Days, there was talk about USC and the Big Ten then. But when you saw the news yesterday break, what did you think about USC, UCLA, and the Big Ten partnership now that it is official in 2024?
Well, I think there's no loyalty among thieves. When you talk about, the alliance and people working on things together, I don't know how any of these ADs could potentially trust each other at all, working towards something, trying to put a playoff together or talking about anything, given the fact that like all of them are Game of Thrones style, slowly moving pieces. And even some of the schools, and it's not always just the commissioners, but, the ADs, and they're figuring out what's best for them. So I know we talked about this. I don't think the Big Ten was real aggressive. They said that, the UCLA and USC approached them, which, I don't think Kevin Warren, was taking the lead in trying to get anything done. Heck, he was in London. And I don't think it's by accident that the first people you heard talk about this of any official nature were Gene Smith, the AD at Ohio State, and Christina Johnson, the president of Ohio State. They're the ones who were probably the ones who all put it together. USC's AD was at Cincinnati. UCLA's AD, Martin Jarman, he was at Ohio State with Gene Smith. So I feel like just kind of connecting the dots and reading the tea leaves that, Ohio State was pretty instrumental in kind of driving this decision home and helping to get it done. But, when I think about this and everything that happened, I never would have imagined a year ago, 20 years ago, that you would have schools from the Pac-12, like charter members, iconic brands like UCLA and USC, ultimately join the Big Ten. Like that would have seemed like such a foreign concept. But in this age now where regionality doesn't seem to matter anymore with regards to college athletics, I guess it kind of makes sense.
Well, and Bobby, I believe this is headed to a 20 or 24 team two-party system. And the two parties will be Big Ten and SEC. And those are going to be the two power conferences that run college football, with probably, when all said and done, 24 teams apiece, more than likely, or at least 20. So if we go with that premise of this is not over and expansion will continue, who should be the most aggressive right now? Is it a remaining Pac-12 or Big 12 or a current ACC team going after the Big Ten or the SEC and trying to jump on board? Is it the SEC and Greg Sankey in response to this move that needs to get aggressive with who they add next? Who do you think should be aggressive right now for their own either domination or survival?
Well, I know this. Greg Sankey doesn't take anything lying down. So he's been analyzing all these moves. He's seeing exactly what's happening and what potentially is what their next move could be. If you're a school in the Pac-12, I guarantee you right now, especially with the rumors, and I do believe that it'll happen, that Washington and Oregon will be joining. And if that's the case, like the Pac-12 is going to be a shell of itself. So if I'm Arizona, if I'm Arizona State, if I'm Colorado, if I'm Utah, I'm calling the Big 12. You throw those schools in the Big 12, and that's not a bad conference. It's a pretty good situation. So I think that they need to be ultra aggressive. They can't afford to sit there and sit on their hands. Like I said, Oregon and Washington, I've been told from people out there that announcement will be coming early next week, that they'll be petitioning to join the Big Ten as well. And then it comes down to that's 18 teams. Like I think the Big Ten at that point will probably begin to have serious conversations potentially with Notre Dame. And who do they pair with them? Do they ultimately try to pull a Stanford in. That's where the Ohio State's president, Christina Johnson, is from. It's where she's an alumnus. Do they go after like a North Carolina and you start poaching from the ACC? Because that's one thing Commissioner Phillips down there with the ACC, like it seems all well and good. They've got, all their teams and they just reconfigured their scheduling, but make no mistake about it. I think that he's understanding like their television deal is very prohibitive to get out of, but it's also not near as good as what the Big Ten or SEC are going to have. Both of the conferences, it's going to be in excess of $100 million now. So I think Greg Sankey's probably analyzing like, who could I add that would make sense that will boost the value? Because we're not interested in cutting up the pie anymore. We want to bring in someone that can not only stand alone, but can also enhance value via market and via competition. And because Clemson seems like the logical school, but you're already in there with South Carolina. They're a great program, but I don't think any of the SEC members are interested in losing part of their market share, losing part of their TV share if the pie doesn't grow more than enough to help overcome that. So I don't know if there's anybody the SEC could really add. Maybe in North Carolina, you get the Charlotte market. Maybe that kind of pulls that in, a little bit more and entrenches a little bit that way. That's kind of, the gem as I see it, because I don't really feel like, gentlemen, outside of Notre Dame, that there's another program out there that you can look at and say, hey, by bringing them in, that will elevate the value of our conference so much that everybody will begin to get more money.
Let's go more with Notre Dame. It seems like the time is never going to be more right for them to make the jump and become a member of a conference than now, and that their value, as you're saying, is never going to be higher. Do you think it happens now and that they'll finally kind of surrender the independence?
I think that it's going to happen. I've talked to a lot of guys, Notre Dame guys, and Brady Quinn is, it's a Columbus native, played against them in high school. I know him really well. He's, best friends with his brother-in-law. Like, we've had conversations about this. And his thing to me was, he was adamant that Notre Dame would never join the Big Ten because they're not a regional player. They're a national player. And if you look at who they play, two of their big rivals, Stanford and USC, well, one of them is going to be in the Big Ten. There's a good chance maybe Stanford is as well. And as they look around, as you guys alluded to, you're talking about probably two conferences that are going to be 18 to 20 of the most powerful schools. You have the ACC that has a handful over there, but their TV deal pales in comparison. They don't have near the interest of football. So when you're sitting down now to make the rules of what the playoff looks like, and really the rules of what college football looks like at an elite Division I level, it's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC that are making most of those rules. And so Notre Dame, like Jack Schwarbeck, he's powerful, but as all of these other schools begin to, condense into these massive conferences, Notre Dame's influence will wane. And so I think they realize, what? It's a coast-to-coast conference. It gives us the ability to go out and recruit nationally still. This is probably the time where you'll see within the next year or maybe handful of years, but it'll be the conversation will begin where Notre Dame will probably finally be in the conference by the time we have college football playoff expansion.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest on Outkick 360. Bobby, who is the luckiest in all of this? Is it Rutgers or Maryland for jumping in the boat in 2014 and having the eternal life raft of being in the Big Ten where they would be wanted by none of these conferences right now if this was happening today? Or is it Vanderbilt, who's a charter member of the SEC, that also would be like Wake Forest, that no one's trying to go out and get and bring into their conference right now? Who's the luckiest of those three?
My goodness. I would probably say Rutgers and Maryland, simply due to the fact, gentlemen, that their athletic departments were in financial disarray before they joined the Big Ten. And one of them, I can't remember who it is, actually upon joining had to borrow against the future value of their television contract to actually pay off some debts. This is like almost like a gambling addict. Like you're selling your future paychecks here to help finish up some facilities, handle some of your debt. So probably them, but Wake has been intermittently good at football, just like Northwestern has. Vanderbilt's never really probably had that type of success. 9 wins under James Franklin has kind of been their ceiling. But you look at a lot of those schools that are near the bottom of these mega conferences now that have really just been fortunate that 80 to 100 years ago they were in the right place at the right time, and had the right ads and presidents who all had smoking clubs together and all liked each other, and they formed a conference, and they've just kind of been tagging along this whole time. You throw Illinois and potentially Northwestern in there in the Big Ten, and because of that, now they get $100 million paychecks every year. So they're very fortunate, but I don't know if they're as fortunate as Maryland and Rutgers, who had really no other option, and by simply the virtue of the markets they were in, were able to join a conference that was going to stroke them huge checks.
Bobby Carpenter with us on Outkick 360. Bobby, we look at the Big 12. They have a new commissioner that started this week. You have the Pac-12. The commissioner there has been on the job for a year. Jim Phillips, commissioner of the ACC. I want to look at this from the ACC perspective for a moment, because the official response, a part of the official response from the Pac-12 yesterday was that they were, quote, surprised and disappointed, end quote. If you are surprised and disappointed right now, after seeing Texas and Oklahoma a year ago, you're not just losing the race, you're not on the lead lap. Like, you're a non-factor to me as I view the landscape of college football and college athletics moving forward. However, there's the Big Ten, there's the SEC, and here's the ACC. If you're Jim Phillips, what are you doing to ensure that you're not surprised and disappointed like these other conferences have been over the last 12 months?
Well, I think part of it, when you look at this, George Kliavkoff, I think, has done a really good job. I mean, he was handled a flaming bag of dog turds.
Yes.
Based on what Larry Scott gave. Larry Scott, here's the thing, gentlemen, like Texas and OU aren't in the SEC yet because of their television deal, because it was so prohibitive to get out of. USC and UCLA, they're going to be able to walk beforehand without paying a dime. Zero. I mean, Larry Scott set them up for failure. And so I think Kliavkoff's done a good job. If I'm Jim Phillips, what I'm doing is I'm calling everybody that I knew. He was the former AD at Northwestern. I'm calling anyone I know in the Big Ten and listen, is there anybody you're going after? Like, someone give me some backdoor information here. Because when I have my meeting and we have all the presidents and ADs and they're sitting there looking at me in the face, and I feel like I'm playing a game of poker, but I can't tell if they're actually bluffing or not when they say we're all in, because 2 days later they're going to be entering a resignation letter. Like, I got to know who the targets are. And so I think that connection probably helps him. But I mean, gentlemen, think about it. Like, Jim Phillips will do everything he can. I'm going to pull everybody together. Hey, this is our TV deal. Maybe we'll try to renegotiate it. At least it's very punitive to get out of. So that's one of the reasons why you look at Clemson, North Carolina, some of these attractive schools, maybe a Florida State, why they're not leaving. Yeah, they could get paid more elsewhere, but it's a very, very steep penalty for exit. So he does have that on his side. I don't know if there's any acquisitions that are out there to be made to help him. Like, who would he bring in? A West Virginia, maybe a Cincinnati? Like, could you go after a Baylor? Like, I don't know if any of those are really moving the needle the way that they need. So I think the best thing he can do is stand pat and hope that he doesn't lose North Carolina, that he doesn't lose a Clemson, potentially a Florida State, like some of these big-time members, especially the charter members, because you start losing them, and all of a sudden you'll see an ACC, I believe, that's starting to look a lot like the Pac-12.
Bear with me and tell me if I'm crazy to think this could be a factor in recruiting going forward. I'm a kid going to USC or UCLA. I think of it as the sunshiny conference. Yeah, I'm going to play in some rain in the Pacific Northwest, but I'm playing Arizona, Arizona State, UCLA or USC. And now I'm going to Minnesota, and I'm going to Northwestern, and I'm going to Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska. That's not what I really was thinking about. And I could be going to Florida and Georgia and Alabama. It's a better weather situation. I think weather can be overrated as a thing, but we know some of these Midwestern schools have been hit by that. Nebraska's not attractive like it used to be for some of these reasons. Am I crazy that could shift the landscape a little bit for some kids against UCLA and USC?
Well, it's interesting because Lincoln Riley, like, he had a bunch of the Southern California kids committed to Oklahoma, and then they all kind of followed him there. I know a lot of schools have done really well in the Pac-12 recruiting region from outside, Big Ten, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. Like, they've done a good job going in there and getting players. And so there might be some players that it would impact, but I noted this morning in Gene Smith in his press conference. He's like, you're playing in Los Angeles, you're playing in Chicago, you're playing in the New York, New Jersey market. So if you're somebody that views yourself as a national prospect, to be able to get as much exposure now to brand build and do all of those things, you will put yourself now, I guess, in the biggest markets. Is the weather ideal in the Midwest in October, November? No, it can suck, guys. I'm gonna be real. Like it's gray, it gets rainy, it's not ideal. But you have, I guess, something else to sell with the national landscape of all that out there to be able to play in these massive markets and hopefully be playing in some of these big games.
Bobby, is there a coach or multiple coaches that, with some sway, that gets involved with their ADs and their schools and says, get us out of this situation and into the Big Ten or SEC? Two examples. Dabo Swinney at Clemson. What are you thinking if you're him right now? And the other one, even though he just got there, but he's got some pull, is Mario Cristobal now at Miami. Do you think these coaches, these big-time football coaches, are sitting idly by, or are they going to their bosses and saying, we need to be on the phone, being proactive with all of this, and not just sitting back?
I do think that both of those guys are fully aware. Right now they look like they have a pretty good shot to the playoff. If they can, because the ACC is going to be included. This isn't going to be a Big Ten SEC playoff. They'll be inclusive with other conferences, and they probably have a pretty easy path. So is going to the SEC a better move for them right now? I don't know if they truly want to, and it'd be very punitive. I do think those are two coaches that probably have the sway to be able to get it done. But frankly, like if you look at a lot of these decisions, I don't think, gentlemen, Lincoln Riley had any idea, or Chip Kelly had any idea, from what I had been told, that they weren't let in on this, very, soon at all. That's why I think Lincoln Riley, when he left Oklahoma, like, I don't think he knew that they were going to be going to the SEC. So, he's been duped twice now by his school with potentially moving. So I do think that those coaches have the cachet to do that. I don't know if them moving to the SEC, it's more money, but it might be a tougher path. And I guess I don't know exactly how financially punitive it could be to get out of there. But I do think those are two coaches and probably two schools that should say, hey, we need to monitor this very closely and have some irons in the fire, because we don't want to have something happen where all of a sudden North Carolina moves and now like the ACC is falling apart. We need to have a landing spot. So if nothing else, I would say they need to be at least reaching out and keep some of the lines warm, just to make sure that you have a spot to go and be able to gauge interest in how that would potentially work.
Bobby, I know you are well connected and part of a tight knit group of Buckeyes from your era, right? And probably this era. Of those group texts or DMs or messages, whatever, anybody message you yesterday and absolutely hate it, or does everyone see where we're headed and what's to come and they're on board?
Oh, I'll say this. Like, I hate it. It's good for my conference. Like, I'd rather be at Ohio State than be an alumnus of Arizona State right now. Like, you're looking around like, what are we going to do? So you're in the catbird seat. But, guys, for all the movement, Nebraska in the Big Ten wasn't necessarily a fan of that. Like, I liked it when Miami and Vautech were playing in the Big East. And maybe that's just because the era that I grew up in. I'm nostalgic for the fact that, you had like 6 conferences, you had some things spread around, and there was good teams kind of everywhere. There's a certain regionality to it. Like, I like that. I really do. I think that's what was great about college football. Now, am I going to be like an old man shaking my fist at the sky, being angry about it? Like, that's not going to change it. That doesn't mean like they have to be all gung ho. And so, like Ben Hartsock, a teammate of mine, does a lot of stuff on Sirius XM. Like, he's against like NIL. He doesn't like the portal. I'm like, Ben, you can be as angry as you want. These things are here to stay. Like, there's going to be relocation of conferences. There's going to be conferences that disappear. And, I can't even imagine, like, even if you're at USC, like, all of a sudden now, and I have these conversation with guys at Nebraska, and these are the conversations that guys at Texas and Oklahoma will have. Like, so you were all Big 12. Like, well, what does that mean? Well, it's not the conference you're in anymore. We won, 10 Big 12 championships. What all this? Like, what does that mean? It's like a defunct deal. You're no longer part of it. So like, you lose a little bit of what you are. And so for Ohio State, they've been in the same conference. Like, it's not going to change them. There's just other schools around them. But I still don't truly enjoy it. And I know a lot of my teammates say, yeah, it's great. It's glad the Big Ten's adding teams. Like, they're going to be one of the power brokers. It's really them in the SEC now. Maybe get Notre Dame in. And, like, that's good for the school, and it's ultimately good for your setting. But I don't know if this gentleman is, like, really good for the college game. I think you could have had NIL and transfer portal and still had, you know, like 6 conferences that were pretty nice, because, like, you know, they're all just merging together now. Like, the regionality, I understand you can fly, you can do all that, but there was just something nice and nostalgic about it. To me, that's like what makes college sports a little more special than professional.
And all of us are fans of the nostalgia of sports. Keep this in mind. I think we could easily say this. We have 2 years left of Power 5 college football on the horizon.
Yeah.
That's it. Or Power 5 sports in general.
It's Power 2 in football.
And two years left based on the TV contracts that are in place, right? So that those could be bought out too. Who knows? Bobby, always great. We will table the discussion on the player dinners and rookie dinners. I know you have a great story to add to that. We will do that next week. We always appreciate you making time for the show, even from your parents' house. Happy 4th of July to you, man.
Hey, man, I'll
Cheers.
give you guys a little, like, glimpse up here.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
it's all
great.
my dad's stuff. I mean, he's got all kinds of good things
That's
around
awesome.
there. So
Very cool.
yeah, he's got his house is way cooler than mine.
Hey, happy 4th to all the Carpenters
Yep.
out there.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Happy 4th.
Bobby
Hey, thanks,
Carpenter
guys.
there.
Happy 4th.
Follow him on Twitter at bcarp3. Coming up, I was flipping through. I don't know if you guys got this in the mail. It was probably a mass mailer. Trying to get me to order fireworks. I guess they got my address,
Oh,
and
mail
there's
order.
this little magazine that tells you. And so I was flipping through it while having dinner recently, and the names of these firework packages that you can purchase are right in line with what Corey or Jacob would want, you know, their band name to be called. We pick out our favorite, 4th of July Spectacular. And I have a favorite for Chad as well that I think he would sign up for and want to purchase. We get ready for the 4th, plus plenty of guests on deck today. Outkick 360 rolls on. I opened up this firework magazine. First one I saw was the mother load, and I just kept scrolling. Kept, just flipping through because the descriptions are awesome. Outkick 360 rolls on.
This is a physical magazine that you received.
Yes, and I should have brought this in.
Not anything online.
Nothing online. Maximum legal load.
How much for the maximum legal load?
It was, all these were like over $150, like these full displays. Up to, there were $1,200 ones. There were plenty to choose from, but the descriptions, patriotic exotica.
That's a good one.
You Betcha is another one. There is Memory Surprise, which is, use your imagination on that, I guess.
That happens to Jacob Swanson all the time, the Memory Surprise.
There was one called the Jamaican Explosion, which I thought Chad would love.
Jamaican Explosion, good. I could make a joke about that and get the entire country against me again.
But the entire country of Jamaica, not the entire country of the U.S.
Yeah, the U.S. would be behind me.
Battling elk, like all of these were like, man, that sounds like something that will be going off in the neighborhood this weekend.
Battling elk, I could see like antlers in the sky.
Battling elk sounds like a town in North Dakota, like an actual place. Where are you going? We're going to go up to the lake and Battling Elk, North Dakota this weekend. It's going to be great.
We know that fireworks and idiots go together oftentimes.
Yes.
I just hope. I had a friend who's a fireman, so on a serious note, it hasn't rained in central Tennessee in how long?
Middle Tennessee.
It rained yesterday, actually.
Well, they're dry stuff everywhere, and they're anticipating fires like crazy as a result of fireworks. So I hope people are smarter than usual.
Hopefully we need rain bad around here. It's supposed to rain all weekend off and on. So I'm hoping that actually happens. We had this threat last week too, and it didn't happen, at least where I was.
And there's going to be there will be shows all weekend because some were moved up to there's some tonight, there are some tomorrow because it's on Monday.
Yeah.
They want to start it late, and then if you have it scheduled early in the weekend, you can always postpone it throughout the weekend if it rains.
We'll probably do like the little kids fireworks stuff that I can do with them.
Yeah.
I'll go out and
We
do
go Roman
stuff
candles
on
or-
like Sunday. Like Sunday evening, they'll stay up late because Monday we have a big family 4th of July where everyone basically throws in like $250 of the family, and we have a huge spectacle out in College Grove, Tennessee, on a farm.
So I've told you about my older dog, Finley, who is fireworks fearful. He's at a point now, this is not fireworks related. We have the puppy, Ripley. So Ripley gets crated when we go out. Finley can't stand Ripley being crated. Finley goes upstairs and winds up in the oddest places. The other day we got home, he was in Simon's hamper. Now, he's got arthritis and 2 ACL repaired knees. How he got into Simon's hamper athletically is impossible. He must have found his way in there and bounced it back up some way. But he finds comfort in these tight spots. So if we leave during a fireworks night, I can only imagine what this guy's going to wind up doing.
Gunfighters from hell is another option.
Yeah, if somebody's doing that, hunting anywhere near us,
that's going to be a problem.
Finley's going to be in hell.
It's going to be a problem.
Finley will be in hell.
Larry Donald's going to give them hell tonight here at 6th and Peabody. He's part of the main event for TriStar Boxing. He joins us in studio to discuss all the athletes getting into his sport. Second hour, Outkick 360 continues from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Friday night fights here tonight with TriStar Boxing. They have 8 bouts throughout the evening. Starts at 6 o'clock Central Time. You'll be able to watch at TriStarBoxing.com. We're sticking around. We'll be a part of this and look forward to chatting with Larry Donald coming up. He's fighting tonight, and he'll join us in studio hours before making the walk to the ring outside in the beer garden. Amy Dash, the founder of League of Justice, and she is the legal insider for Odyssey. She'll be with us in 20 minutes. Looking forward to chatting with her. There are plenty of legalities to discuss, everything from NIL to NFL ownership issues to, of course, Deshaun Watson and much more. Amy Dash joins us in 20 minutes. And then Josh Pate, an hour and 15 minutes from now. Pate State, he was out in Los Angeles yesterday and this week, broadcasting for 24/7 Sports from Elite 11 as the news broke that the Pac-12 would be losing USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. Josh Pate joins us coming up in a little over an hour. So we're jam-packed going into the July 4th weekend.
Boys, I'd be remiss if I did not wish a happy birthday to someone very special to me today. Tom Cruise, 60 years old today.
60?
Tom Cruise turned 60 years old today.
Wow.
60-year-old Tom Cruise. How about that?
It's the largest man crush on the show.
And it's warranted. I mean, especially with his latest work in Top Gun Maverick. He went away for a bit. You know, I lost him. I feel like I really lost Tom Cruise for a little while.
Yeah, talk to us about his
all
Oprah
the Scientology,
appearance. Talk to us about his Oprah appearance.
Not just the Oprah, the Matt Lauer interview where he called him glib. Was that you're glib.
Very glib.
Matt, you're glib. That's what you are. Lost him for a bit, but my guy's back now. He's fully back in. He has shut his mouth about Scientology. I don't know that he's still involved at all. If so, we're not hearing about it. And he has gone right back to entertaining us. Entertain us, clown. That's the
I'll
type
be your
of
clown.
I mean, Tom Cruise may legitimately kill himself for the good of the craft and entertaining people. He's about to shoot a movie in space. He's like, I will die on this job.
Well, he's practically already doing that with the way he films Top Gun, with the G-forces that he faces.
Well, he shattered his ankle shooting the last Mission Impossible, jumping from one building to another, and he took like 2.5 weeks off of shooting and came back and could barely walk the rest of the movie, but somehow gutted it out and finished the project.
I don't think it's been discussed enough how 90% of that film, the actors are actually in those jets filming those scenes where they go up, the director is on the ground, has no communication with them, and when they come back, they hand over the chip that's got the footage on it, and if you like it, great. If not, you're redoing these scenes where you're trying not to pass out.
It's crazy. I was reading a story I think The Ringer had a study from IMDb on how in the last 20 years, the average movie star, the headliner for a movie, has gotten older and older. How this is a golden era for older movie stars. And even TV shows, Kevin Costner and what he's doing on Yellowstone, and they talk about Tom Cruise. But the median age has gone from somewhere that was like 37 years old, late 30s, for someone headlining a movie, to 46 as the average age for the movie star.
Wow.
And it discusses Top Gun Maverick and says the stars of Top Gun Maverick are, at the time, soon-to-be 60-year-old Tom Cruise, 50-something Jennifer Connelly, 50-something John Hamm, 62-year-old Val Kilmer makes an appearance, 73-year-old Ed Harris is in the movie, and then a smattering of 30-somethings. You think about the younger pilots as all, up and... No, they're all in their 30s. One of them is 40 years old that plays the younger pilot in it. So even the young pilots are mature actors that are in the movie. So that's good news for all of us old people out there.
Paul, the other detail that I learned by binging and watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, which you can find on YouTube, I had no idea that a lot of these actors, whenever they sign up for these roles, especially the action or superhero roles, you're under a contract where if they want to make a sequel, if they want to make a trilogy,
you're in.
You're contracted based on whatever you've signed up for going into the first one.
Yeah.
Instead of
you don't get to read a script and see if it's any good.
Not the script. I'm saying financially. So, like, Amber Heard was trying to make the argument that she lost money, that they didn't give her enough for Aquaman 2 because of whatever was going on in this op-ed. And they had, they called people up. They were like, no, we wouldn't have offered her more because she's under contract from Aquaman where she's locked in if we so choose. We could recast her role.
Yeah.
But she's going to make the same because we're not going to give her a raise because we don't do that for anyone.
I
had no idea that's how it went down.
You joke about going back and watching a jury trial. That's like, to me, watching a old game. If I know the result, I had no interest in watching, watching
there were so
it,
many
what
details of the business that had nothing to do with the result, though.
But that trial also led to the biggest story out of it, and that's Johnny Depp is about to get Jack Sparrow back. I don't know if you saw the reports. He's going to sign a contract for $311 million to make another Pirates movie as Jack Sparrow and a spin-off series about the origins of Jack Sparrow for Disney+.
311, you said?
It's over $300 million.
Less than Deshaun Watson, though, it sounded like.
I mean, look,
320 versus 311.
You watch a trial and you think, well, there's probably no real winners in all of this with all the dirty laundry being aired for everyone. No, there's a clear winner in all this. It's Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp fans came to his defense, and he is pretty much vindicated.
Well, he's not
Disney's
losing,
bringing him back
but
in.
a lot of people think he's a nut now that didn't necessarily think he was a nut before.
Well, I always thought he was a bit of a nut.
He's not a bit of a nut.
Based on
He's
his
an
interviews,
outright nut.
Based on his interviews, but he's getting Disney to give him $300 million.
Let me give you my rule. American-born people who speak with British accents for no reason are crazy. He's one of them.
Didn't he move to France? Isn't he like a French resident
you don't
now?
gain a British accent in France. You gain a French accent.
I feel like he's
in France.
actually like I don't think that he's a citizen of the United States anymore. I think he's a naturalized citizen of France. Maybe I'm wrong.
Larry Donald is with us. He's fighting tonight with TriStar Boxing here at 6th and Peabody. Fight night is here. And we have a guy who's nice enough to join us on the day of the fight to discuss what's going down. Larry, great to meet you in person, man. We saw you yesterday as you're getting ready for the weigh-in. You feel a lot better today, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Rehydrated, ready to go.
How much leeway do you have weight-wise? What'd you need to weigh in at? What can you go up to now comfortably?
Typically, I usually fight at 135, but for this fight, I'm fighting at 140. And I usually walk around probably about like 145 anyways. So, a lot of fighters cut big amounts, like, 10-plus pounds, but for me, it's always, like, under 10 anyway, so it wasn't that bad of a cut at all.
So this made the 140 catch weight is much easier for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot easier. Like, I didn't have to starve myself or dehydrate or anything like that. I really just kind of, just worked out, hit the sauna a little bit, and, honestly, walking from the parking lot to here, I lost about 3 pounds anyway, so.
Is it hard for you to do an interview like this right now when you're hours away from boxing someone with all the preparation that goes in?
No, not really. Honestly, it's good to kind of get away and just, day of the fight, I kind of just stay busy. I watch fights. I, hang with my friends. And, you don't always want to be in a space where you're just constantly thinking of, like, I gotta do this, because I've been doing that for the past, 6 to 8 weeks anyway. So it's actually kind of refreshing to do this.
Well, you're remarkably calm right now. I would have worked myself into a lather and been overly anxious at this point. What's your day like from here on out? When do you actually enter the ring to fight, and what are you going to go do now to get ready?
So, we're here now. So basically after this, I'll go do like physicals and, do check-in and all the other stuff and pretty much just relax, and I'm just waiting until I fight. And as far as like what time I fight, I'm the last fight of the night. So I got a pretty good, window of time, to watch the other fighters and, just kind of chill until I, get going.
I think most people, thrown a football, shot a basketball, swung a golf club. I think boxing, it's the hardest thing to relate to. Give us the feeling of, especially your first couple fights, getting into the ring and just having that feeling of it's just me.
Yeah, boxing, it's just, I know I've played other sports growing up, football, basketball, just everything. And there's nothing I can really, relate it to the feeling of being in, in a fight. It's just kind of, there's no team, you got your corner, but, when the bell rings, it's just you and your opponent. And it's kind of just like just a moment that you're in and you just live by it. I'm like, this is what I'm here for, this is what I trained for. And then next thing you know, the fight's over. And, going into a fight, you kind of feel every single emotion that you think of. But once you're in the ring, you're like, okay, this is why I do it. This is why I train. And then after the fight, you're like, man, that was crazy. Did I just do that? And then you're like, okay, when do I do this again? So,
Larry Donald, our guest, TriStar Boxing with the event tonight, promoting the 8 event bouts that will take place here at 6th and Peabody. You can stream that as well. TristarBoxing.com. I want to talk the business of boxing right now.
Yeah.
Because there has been a marriage in a way between celebrity, athlete, UFC, MMA, boxing. That's where the money is, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Mayweather and McGregor, that happens a few years ago, and the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
What has now Jake Paul meant to the sport of boxing, the science of boxing? Because it's now the money involved in the sport itself. And if you're on the card with Jake Paul, you're making some coin.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, you got to look at it for what it is. Like Jake Paul says that he wants to be a world champion, and honestly, he's a young kid. He's working really hard. People kind of have this misconception like, yo, this dude is just a YouTuber. He can't fight. And, that's kind of like what he's selling. That's why he's tricking a lot of people. But, I mean, he's a millionaire from his YouTube videos and his other, everything else that he does. And, he has all the amenities that you need as a fighter to, he has the best training in the world, access to everything that you need. And he's actually, getting pretty good. Now, will he be world champion? That's, yet to be seen. But he does have a lane of his own and a niche that he's in. And people who want to try to follow what he does, whether it's other athletes or celebrities or YouTubers, they got to kind of have respect for the sport, and they got to kind of, just, appreciate, boxing and respect for boxing. Because, you seen his fight with Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson's like, oh, I'm an NBA player.
Right.
I got this little, trash-talking kid, but I'm an athlete. I'm big and strong. But he didn't have respect for boxing, and then you seen what happened to him. So.
No doubt. And you can tell Jake Paul has the respect for the sport because he's building this brand of an unbeaten lane, right? That's what he's promoting, and he's going up against other individual brands. I think he's now going to be taking on Tyson Fury's half brother or something. Nonetheless, so we've got. I'm looking at some of the other athletes. Frank Gore seems to be about this life.
Yeah, taking it seriously.
Le'Veon Bell has talked about wanting to fight Adrian Peterson. I don't know if it's a money grab or if they're actually trying to do this or it's both. But as a pro boxer, when you see these guys step out of the NFL lane and try to come in and make some cash over a one-event thing, do you look at that like, man, it's taking a spot for someone else, or do you think, man, this is a spot for me to try to get into that night, that event?
Once again, like it's a lane of its own. It's celebrity boxing. It's not world championship level. And with Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell fighting, I mean, once again they got to have respect for the sport and they got to train. And you mentioned Frank Gore. Frank Gore, he's actually training. He actually had another fight a couple weeks ago. He fought maybe an actual fighter. I don't know if he's an MMA guy or a boxer, but he looked pretty good. But he's actually training. He's actually doing the work and getting his skill set better.
To be legitimately respectful of the sport, and like you said, going from one sport to another, what's the amount of time one would need? If you're a top-level athlete in one sport and you decide, I'm going to give this a shot, how long would they need to train to do that for you to take them seriously at all?
That's really based on the athlete. You know what I'm saying? A lot of sports, some sports cross over better. From what I've seen, a lot of basketball players, they transition over better to boxing. Football players are kind of like hunched down and more compact, and, it takes them a minute to get into the flow of moving like a boxer because, boxing is about, being nice and relaxed, even with your punches. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to move and flow and not just always be so, like, tense. You know what I'm saying? And, it really, like I said, it just depends on the athlete and what level they are. Like, you have some athletes that have boxed when they were little. Like, I think Darren Williams, maybe he boxed, whenever he was younger. And, in that kind of transition, even though he didn't compete like, most fighters, but, he started training again, and he got in there, he looked a lot better, and he kind of moved faster than other fighters. So
Larry Donald fights tonight with TriStar Boxing here at 6th and Peabody. Do you get amped to watch Canelo Triple G again whenever that rolls around?
At first I didn't because I was like, well, I'll be honest, I thought Triple G won the first fight, and they gave it to Canelo. I thought Canelo won the second fight, and I thought they should have just went ahead and, done the third fight. And, you kind of live, I think it was like 4 years past, and then I was kind of like, okay, we've been there, done that. We moved past it. But once they started the promotion and you kind of see that there is bad blood, they've known each other for a while. They were former, sparring partners. And, they kind of have a genuine dislike for each other. Even though Triple G's like, no, it's just business. Canelo, he doesn't like Canelo. Canelo doesn't like him. So that does add to it.
What is your record?
5-0, 3 KOs.
5-0, 3 KOs. Sanctioned event tonight. They had the weigh-in and everything, so this is official.
Oh, yeah.
There are plenty of unsanctioned fights that no one talks about where you can go and spar and do some stuff. How do you train for an event like this that's going to counter your record, but also wanting to spar and get some live action and not just punch a bag?
Yeah, so I have my primary training partner. His name's Eduardo Aguilar. He goes by Chachi. He's future world champion, one of the best boxers I've ever been in there with. And we do like a lot of training. Obviously, the most important part of boxing is, the work that you do whenever nobody's watching, waking up or early morning or even late at night, putting the miles in. And, with me, turning pro when I did, I don't have to have somebody tell me, hey, Larry, wake up, go run. Hey, go do your back work. Go all that stuff that you have to do as a fighter to get in shape. I can do that on my own. But there's certain things that you do as a fighter that you need to fine tune as far as like fight simulation and, getting the punches down, your timing down. And that's the real stuff that you need to work on.
Are you under a multi-fight contract with TriStar?
No, I'm just fight by fight.
Okay, so it's my understanding this is not just a one-off event here.
Yeah.
I think we need to put our collective minds together. If you're main eventing the next one,
Yeah.
we need to have some long walkout where you come out and you're like carried like a pharaoh out there or something, like you would see Tyson Fury walk out in England,
Yeah.
and put on a spectacle and a show. I mean, there is a showmanship aspect to the promotion that people buy into before you even actually hear the bell ring.
I thought you were going to volunteer me to be the one that carries him out.
Yeah, on Chad's shoulders.
as a
Do you
favor.
have a
Absolutely.
nickname?
Yeah, Limitless. Yeah,
Limitless.
Limitless is my nickname, yeah.
We'll have to do something playing off Limitless.
Oh, no.
Otherwise, we were going to name you the Pharaoh.
Yeah, the Pharaoh, yeah. Hey, a lot of fighters like to be carried out to the ring. I think Ryan Garcia got carried out. Floyd, everybody. That's a big thing. Tyson Fury, I mean, he's like almost 300 pounds, so you probably need a bunch of guys to do that. But, I'm 140, 135, so, it'd be pretty easy to do that.
I'm starting to go to the gym so I can pull my weight.
Yeah.
so
This
to
is the
speak.
next progression in your
Right,
workout is to carry him to the
How
ring.
well do you know this guy you're fighting
Fourth.
tonight? I don't even know who you're fighting.
Yeah, it was.
You don't either.
No, I don't know too much about him. Like I said, it was another kind of late minute replacement
Okay.
as far as like things like that happen, especially at this level. But I don't.
And
know
that
too
sucks
much
when that
about it.
happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like similar to the amateur days of like you don't really know too much about the guy you're fighting. You're just going in there, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter because I'm prepared for whatever and whoever, and if I prepare right and I'm there mentally, then it doesn't matter who it is.
Couple more things, and we'll have you back on because there will be other fight nights here. How many fights are you trying to get into a calendar year to be able to make the amount of money you want to make?
Yeah, right now I'm just trying to stay as active as possible and get, if I could fight 2-3 more times this year, that'd be great. Especially at this level because I'm not fighting elite top tier competition yet. The main thing right here is to get experience and, build my record and get more comfortable fighting at the pro level. And then, once I get to 10, 15, wins right around the area, then I'll start fighting contenders and, hopefully champions, soon. Then that's whenever you fight at that level, the fights are spaced out a little bit more because bigger promotions, more money behind it, and you kind of build up the the stuff like that.
Right, and that's why when you have a guy pull out or fall out of a fight last minute, you've trained. This is a date and a payday for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm assuming it's a show-up thing.
Yeah.
It's not like weigh in and it's a guaranteed purse.
Yeah.
So you've got to fight to make the purse.
Exactly,
And if you don't have an opponent, you're screwed.
Exactly, because it's, like I said, this is the beginning stages of my career, and it's not like huge promotions, not a huge people put up a bunch of money. It's really the supporters that I have, they come in and support us, and that's the biggest part. It's like people spend their hard-earned money to come support me and watch me fight. So I definitely want to come out and give them a good show.
How can we follow you on Instagram?
You can follow me at Larry_Donald, and also you can follow my training studio, which is right down the road, LD Boxing on Instagram.
We are doing that right now. We will be in attendance tonight. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
And I really look forward to watching you compete tonight.
All righty, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Larry Donald
luck.
has been our guest. I don't know what he's going to do now, but he's extremely loose, ready to go. I wish there were options on FanDuel for Larry Donald's bout tonight. I would take the money. I would place it on Larry right now in the red corner.
I am now following LD Boxing on
Odds
Instagram.
would-
Oh, he's
Officially.
fighting Decorian Dodson. I just learned this. There you go.
Odds would probably be
Yeah.
dictate that you have to bet
How many
a lot of
rounds?
money.
4 rounds.
Oh, 4 rounds. KO in the third.
Yeah.
It's over tonight for Decorian.
Yes, sir.
He did air quotes when he said 4 rounds. That's it. Not like it's going to go 4 rounds. It's not going that long.
Coming up, Amy Dash joins us. A lot of legalities to discuss in the world of sports. Legal insider for Odyssey. She joins us next on Outkick 360. Outkick 360 rolls on across the Outkick network from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us, headed into the July 4th weekend. Plenty of headlines involving the legalities of football right now, pro and college. Amy Dash joins us at Amy Dash TV on social media, and with Odyssey, she's their legal analyst. Amy, great to have you on the show. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Based on the recent news of everything that's taken place with the hearing with Deshaun Watson and what we are now waiting on with Judge Sue Robinson, what are you now expecting as we move forward here? The latest report is we could be waiting weeks on the final resolution. Give us kind of a timeline, and based on what you've heard, what you've read, who you've talked with, what are you expecting?
I know a lot of people want it, before that July 26th, 27th date. I heard you mention in the beginning of the show. I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen because I think the post-hearing briefs were requested for July 11th. She needs time to be able to review those, review all the evidence, and then come up with a written opinion. So I think definitely in the next couple of weeks we'll know. But what I'm expecting is I think there will be discipline in at least a couple of cases. I just do not see a scenario where there's 24 allegations, there's extensive police interviews, NFL interviews, documentary evidence, and there is not, enough evidence in at least a couple of cases to merit a suspension. And the reason I say that is, even though the NFL has the burden of proof, they don't necessarily have to prove guilt of sexual assault allegations. They can just prove that the conduct demonstrated was detrimental to the league and the public faith and perception of the NFL. And clearly, with everything that's happened with the media, with his decision to reach out, go outside of the contracted entity that was coordinated for the Texans to get their massages, reach out to dozens and dozens of women on social media, arrange massages in people's homes, their mothers' homes, hotels, use massage tables from the team, and then admit that sexual encounters took place with some of these women. That in and of itself might be enough to get some sort of a suspension on the books.
And we know what the league can do is separate from what the legal system can do, and there doesn't have to be a conviction. But Deshaun Watson's legal team has continued to say this, and they'll continue to do so, and say 2 grand juries did not proceed with this after they heard it. Amy, can you take us through the grand jury process with something like this and what that means when they don't proceed with charges in this case?
To me, it means that there was a problem with the evidence. It's very easy normally to get an indictment. You don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The grand juries are a set of people that sit for an entire term, so they're used to, these are not people who are new to the system. They're used to hearing, but what I thought was odd was that the lead detective said in her deposition that she was not called to testify before the grand jury. This is a detective who said in her deposition that after examining all of the recordings, after interviewing people, albeit Deshaun Watson was not interviewed, but looking at the documentary evidence, speaking to the women, she and her fellow officers were all of one mind that he had committed a crime in all of the cases. So the whole thing is a little bit suspect. There was some reporting that maybe Rusty Hardin, who represents Watson, had been a little chummy with the prosecutor. They had been texting back and forth. He denied that, of course. But I mean, broadly speaking, it says to me there were problems with the evidence that was presented. Keep in mind, a lot may have not been presented. There were a lot of these women lined up in the hallway outside of the grand jury room ready to testify. I believe only one of them was called in. So the grand jury may not have heard a lot, but from what it heard, there must have been some sort of problems with the evidence. What I mean by that is there were some reports from Watson's camp that some of these women, they accused him of sexually assaulting or harassing them. And then a couple of them would text him several days later, or a week later, asking to massage him again. When you have something like that, it puts some doubt into the minds of the jurors over whether these women are credible. That being said, I would say that pertained to 10 cases of women that filed criminal complaints. But you have the NFL examining 24 cases. There's still 14 other women that may have decided not to go the criminal route, who may have compelling evidence where you can at least get a suspension on 2 or 3 cases. And that's a year already if you go with the 6-game minimum.
Can you explain Daniel Snyder's ability to avoid / decline a subpoena from the U.S. House of Representatives?
Sure. So I think that was absolutely the right move. I would have advised him to do that. If you watched the hearing up on Capitol Hill, clearly the Democrats at least were gunning for him to get there so that they could pretty much crucify him. I mean, if you listen to their rhetoric, they believe that and stated that he was guilty essentially of what he was accused of. So it's not going to be a fair hearing. There were a lot of Republicans who felt and expressed so on the record that really this shouldn't even be in the domain of Congress. This is not a legislative matter. This is a private corporation. It's the NFL. It's a sport that has nothing to do with lawmaking or public policy. So what Daniel Snyder should and probably will do is he has a team of lawyers. They can contest the validity of that subpoena and say, this is not legally valid. Go to court, ask for it to get thrown out. Now, of course, and they can, by the way, they can use some of that rhetoric from the Republicans during that hearing to say, listen, even some politicians agree that Congress has no business meddling in the private affairs of the NFL or its clubs and what goes on there in a private workplace. Of course, politicians will say, no, 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 we have 2 pieces of legislation pending to protect people from sexual harassment in the workplace, and this influences workplaces across America. Now, unlikely that the courts would ever throw out a subpoena from Congress, because that's really the domain of the political branch. It may be too much of a political question, and they don't want to interfere because of separation of powers between the branches. But they can narrow the scope of it, and that will help Daniel Snyder, because then he won't be subjected to so much questioning. You saw Roger Goodell, being questioned about why he won't let Dave Portnoy into games. So, avoiding things that could either be embarrassing, but also avoiding situations in where he might be brought up on perjury charges if he's asked specific questions or broad questions and he tries to dance around them and gives the appearance, at least, that he's not telling the truth.
So there are 2 things that I'm excited to ask you about from a legal perspective. And you can maybe look at this through the lens of someone representing someone involved with the Commanders in these 2 stories, or if you're looking at it through the lens of the league also. One of them is the idea of compelling someone to sell something they own, right? Where league rules and what they have in their charter about doing this could conflict with rules of or laws of the land. We saw it with Donald Sterling in the NBA. There's a lot of people saying, well, Snyder just shouldn't be allowed to own the Washington Commanders. What do you say when you hear that, and how much of a slippery slope is this when you start going down this road from a legal standpoint?
Personally, I would say the same thing that I'd say in any case. If there's not direct evidence of wrongdoing, even if the person may have engaged in wrongdoing, if it can't be proven, and I'm not talking about by circumstantial evidence, unless it's super strong, but I mean direct evidence, then he shouldn't be stripped of his ownership rights. However, listen, there's a secret settlement allegedly from 2009, I believe, that's being reported on. There's a new investigation where a cheerleader has already accused him directly of sexually harassing her. So there are allegations against him. It's not just that he was supervising this workplace where a lot of toxic things were going on, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't know about it. And people are saying, well, he had to have known he was the owner. It's not that anymore. Now he's directly implicated. So if through the course of that investigation, there's direct evidence that he did something wrong, and I'm not talking about a settlement, because a settlement does not imply guilt. People settle for a variety of reasons. If you can prove he did something wrong, sexually assaulted somebody, sexually harassed somebody, something really serious, then Roger Goodell is likely going to recommend to the owners to try to vote him out. Keep in mind, the owners want to protect their own ownership, so they don't want to be voted out based on mere allegations. So they're not going to do something like that lightly. But in the case of Jerry Richardson, case of Donald Sterling, you had like on its face, they call it prima facie evidence that he did what he was accused of. And so there was no choice but for him to either relinquish his rights to the team or get voted out.
So the other one, this is a hot button issue everywhere, freedom of speech, right? Someone gets in trouble for saying something, and the response is, you're infringing upon my freedom of speech. And I'm talking about Jack Del Rio getting fined $100,000 by Ron Rivera for statements he made in a press conference about January 6th and compared them to some other things that had happened in the country with some laws that were broken. Legally, what do you think when people come back and say you're infringing on someone's right to give one opinion versus another opinion versus stating things that are factually incorrect and being fined for them? What do you make of the whole story?
You can state things that are factually incorrect. I mean, if you're accusing somebody of something, you might actually get sued for defamation. I think, there's a lot of people who are really hypocritical when it comes to this stuff. They don't want to see Colin Kaepernick kneel, and that a lot of people call that freedom of speech, but they want to be able to hear, somebody, an assistant coach, talk about an insurgency up on Capitol Hill and be able to express those thoughts. So I think the rules have to be uniform across the board. And we're not really talking about First Amendment rights here because it's in the context of the NFL. This is a private corporation. So you're not judging it by the same rules that public officials or other people who work for the government are held to. This is an organization that makes its own rules. So there has to be a determination, either within the club or with the league. A lot of times the league and the club don't simultaneously discipline. One will do it over the other. As to whether this reflects negatively, again, this concept of conduct detrimental, it's extremely broad. So I just don't think that you can go take First Amendment rights and speech and transfer it over because the standard is just not the same. It's an incredibly arbitrary standard that the NFL is using to basically give itself as much broad powers as possible to be able to bend to public pressure when necessary so that they don't have any type of financial consequences.
You can follow Amy on Twitter at Amy-TV, Instagram there as well, founder of the website leagueofjustice.com, and she's with Odyssey as their legal insider. We're continuing the theme, Amy, of the off-season of litigation for the league. Stephen Ross, owner of the Miami Dolphins, former head coach Brian Flores, the latest headlines out there involve arbitration, or at least that's the league's hope. What are the steps to actually get there, and what would that mean in the grand scheme of things versus what we're seeing in other issues right now this offseason?
I think the biggest thing in that case is that the defendants are broad in reach, and they include basically the entire league. So had there been a dispute between Brian Flores and his team, that would have a greater chance of going to arbitration because that's the clause specifically says that. When you're talking about the league and you're going to force it into arbitration where the league is in charge of that arbitration, then there's a fairness issue. And judicially in the court system, and we saw this with Tom Brady, we saw this with the Ezekiel Elliott case, the standard is fairness. Is it going to be fair? And if it's not going to be fair, the courts will intervene. A lot of times courts don't want to intervene, though, because they want to respect the collectively bargained for process because it unclogs the court system. So I think it's going to come down to, the types of defendants. But what I will say, like on that front with Stephen Ross, because I've been told, there were serious allegations that he had allegedly asked Flores to fix the game. That's obviously a federal crime, any type of sports bribery, even an attempt to do so, massive fines, potentially jail time. And I think that's going to come down to the evidence. And so you may not see that type of evidence surface in an arbitration, but you may see it surface in a federal court. And I say that because at least I've been told reportedly that the NFL does have a memo that Brian Flores had sent to Dolphins management that details and documents some of these allegations that he made against Ross in 2019 when it happened. And I know certain people are having trouble getting their hands on that document because the NFL is not handing it over. This is something that should be brought up to a judge to say, hey, if you force us into arbitration, the NFL's already in the discovery process holding back documents that are critical to the question of whether Brian Flores was asked to fix games or tank games. And so then we're going to have no shot of the truth ever coming out. So I think, that kind of stuff might persuade a judge to allow this to move forward.
Are those two issues ultimately, you think, going to be adjudicated separately? The charge against Ross that he asked his coach to lose, and Flores's primary case regarding treatment of minority coaches?
I think that if that evidence ends up coming up, it will be used to support Flores's claims on the civil side. And then in the course of that discovery, as things become public, not only through the court process, but through the media process, that if there's evidence to support that, in fact, and what I'm being told is true, and it's strong evidence, well, then sometimes the federal authorities will take note of what's going on in the civil court system. And then that would be a separate process altogether if the federal authorities decide to get involved.
Amy, which topic this offseason are you tired of the most?
Tired of?
Yeah, which one? Like, I mean, you joined a ton of shows through CBS Sports Radio and Fox Sports Radio. Which, I mean, is it the Watson? And by the way, there are so many varying opinions from the same people on the Watson issue right now on if he's going to be suspended for the full season. All of a sudden, Florio's writing a column about, there could be a situation where Sue Robinson doesn't suspend him at all or recommend that. I mean, the back and forth here is just, it's baffling to me.
Yeah, well, I've been shocked. I mean, I'm not necessarily tired of subjects. I find it really fascinating. And I mean, the whole goal for me really is to just take these cases that are timely and relevant to sports and use them as a portal to like educate people in a fun and sports centric way about the law. And hopefully they could take something away from it, whether it's like just discussing it at the water cooler and knowing what you're talking about, or understanding something as complex as the law, just making it super accessible. So I never really get tired of it because there's always that challenge of like parsing through really complex documents and concepts and thinking, how can I make this interesting? How can I bring up sports analogies from the past to really show this evolution of sports law history that isn't really a genre on its own? But I do get tired of, I hate to say this, I have so many allies in the media. I love the media. I love a lot of my fellow reporters, hosts, producers, but speculation like that, taking a headline where legally probably not much is going to happen and blowing it up and misinforming people and just for the sake of making another headline. And actually, I get a lot more calls when that happens because it's like, is this really true? This sounds so extreme. Can you come in and clarify it? And then I have to say, that's unlikely to happen. Now, listen, he could get no discipline. If you look at it from purely legal, factual basis, this is a former federal judge. She might think that the evidence just isn't strong enough, and that's a possibility. I would be shocked by it, but I've been shocked many times before about how judges have ruled on these cases. So, I mean, that element of surprise keeps it exciting.
Amy, help me with this on NIL. Okay, if I am a high school athlete in a state like California that allows name, image, likeness dollars to come to me, and I am a collective in another state that wants to rep that athlete through name, image, and likeness, how is the NCAA going to come in and say, no, that is against the rules. You can't do that and be affiliated with any university if I'm not technically affiliated with university, but wink, wink, we all know what's going on for that said player to go to that university. Help me with how that's going to be adjudicated.
Well, my experience with the collectives is that you have these billionaires who are backing specific universities that either they have a connection to because they coached there, or they're an alum, or they live in that state. And they're sort of disguising NIL as really a recruitment tactic where they're saying, okay, you'll come to XYZ University and you will have the opportunity to earn up to, let's say, $100,000, and you'll sign autographs and you'll do endorsement deals and promotions. But really, they're just using that money to recruit the person because they know they're guaranteed that money. And so they're saying, sign a couple of balls and that's your services. So it qualifies as NIL. The problem, and I think what you're specifically talking about, is the differences between the different state laws, where you literally have these billionaires influencing and contributing to the campaigns of politicians in states to change the laws to allow and protect collectives to do this. So they're stacking university teams, these billionaires. And so it's no longer a level playing field. And until you have federal uniformity, and I think this would solve the problem that you're talking about, where the federal government comes in and says, no, a collective cannot be involved with a potential recruit until that recruit has committed. And then they override those state laws that are either manipulated by money or that conflict with one another. It's going to be really hard for the NCAA to enforce anything. And it's not just, recruitment, it's also retention. Once the player is there, it's very easy for them to stay because they make their demand of, if you don't give me more NIL money, I'm going to go into the transfer portal, see you later. So right now they need to not just say, oh, collectives can't help recruit people. They should also say collectives cannot get in bed with universities, set up university specific deals that create this landscape of, oh, I know if I go to this school, this is how much I'm going to make. They don't even have to have contact with me. I already know what the deal is.
Legal analyst Amy Dash has been our guest on Outkick 360. Amy, thank you so much for the time, especially on short notice. Happy 4th. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Same to you. My pleasure.
This is great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, she was awesome. Hopefully we
Really
didn't.
good.
Hopefully had her facts right whenever she was listening to the first segment.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm sure we did not. I'm also quite sure that no one's going to be able to legislate what she was talking about with the collectives and what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have Amy on again. At least we will do our part on this end to try to have her on the show again, because there will be a lot of headlines involving this over the next month or so and moving forward. Coming up, headlines of the day. Plus, coming in hour number 3, Josh Pate of 24/7 Sports will talk about the conference realignment involving USC, UCLA, and what's next with all of this. We hope you're next with us on Outkick 360. Rudy Gobert has been traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves from Utah to Minnesota. Outkick 360 rolls on. Some star power headline there.
Star power headline, but two very similar franchises in my mind. You go from Utah to Minnesota, those are two that I kind of lump in together.
Karl Anthony Towns, who signed a maximum deal to stay in Minnesota last night. So Timberwolves loading up.
You don't have to change wardrobes too much.
So news coming out of Oregon. This from John Canzano, who is a columnist and radio personality in Oregon, big-time newsmaker, news guy in the state of Oregon, who tweets, I spoke to lawmakers in Washington and Oregon today. There's a movement afoot to emphasize that the public and taxpayers do not want public Pac-12 universities split from each other. The effort, if successful, would keep Oregon State and Oregon and Washington State and Washington together.
That's nice that you keep those four together, I suppose, for the Pacific Northwest. But what about after that?
It's really, to me, I see this and I think this is a push from Washington State and Oregon State and people affiliated with those universities to keep them there.
Relevant.
But if not, they're getting closer to irrelevance.
Yes.
If they get left behind while those two programs, which has been rumored to be the next two that are going to appeal to be in the Big Ten.
But again, you keep those four together, and if everything else is in action and in movement, you can't have a 4-team league, so who else are you with? You do that, sacrificing Stanford and everybody else that you've played with, and you're going to end up with a bunch of crap in the rest of your league.
We all drown together.
I may need to reach back out to Amy Dash because I wonder if you're Oregon or Washington, can you just sign a contract right now? Can you have the Big Ten send you over an invite right now before anything like this happens?
Well, and it's going to happen faster than legislation can happen, right? They said next week.
Also, do
it right now. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you just go ahead and get in front of it.
Isn't UCLA a public school?
Yes.
USC's private. I do know that, but I believe UCLA is a public school. Yeah. I mean, that's a public school in the state of California that had no problem breaking away from other public schools in the state of California.
Well, it's not with other public schools in the state of California. Well, Berkeley, yeah.
The Cal's in the conference. I mean, my point is there's all this talk that Virginia and Virginia Tech, by lawmakers, are tied at the hip and cannot separate from each other. So that's what Oregon and Washington are trying to argue. If you're a taxpayer-funded university, you can't split from each other. Another thing to watch.
What if Kevin Warren comes back and says, you know what, we'll take all four?
You know, we'll buy off Congress in your state. That's what we'll do. Instead of paying, since it's free to get you out of your conference, we'll just pay Congress to shut up.
Give us Washington. We'll take Washington State. Yeah. Headlines when we return. Josh Pate, Pate State, joins us in 20 minutes on Outkick 360. Final hour is here of Outkick 360 Friday edition from Nashville, 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Crew is all here today. Why are we blessed in studio with Sleepy Danny today?
I don't know. It's very vague on the
We
details.
haven't discussed him in a while.
Danny, spill it out.
Are you the only one working over at headquarters today? Is that why you're here? Oh, okay. So he's,
But she's usually not here.
But
Yes,
we
we're
never
live.
see. We're never blessed with.
we just
Becca's
woke him up.
presence.
Sorry. You guys
But
live?
now we're. Where am I?
So Becca's out, so he's doing everything, but Becca's never here.
Danny just woke up from a slumber and had the
I
look
love
of a
it.
man
Very
who just
complex
realized he's not in his
explanation.
normal
Yeah.
office. Oh, this isn't my cubicle.
How's the comfort level on that bench with all those pillows? We got those pillows for you.
Yeah, the note taking has been immaculate today from Daniel.
I think he's using invisible ink.
Well, it's Danny's got such a good deadpan about him. When you ask him a question, you can't tell if he's joking or serious. But he walked in earlier. I was one of the studio's packed today, by the way. But I was one of the few people in here, and I said, "Hey,
You are
good seeing you." And he's like, "Yeah, just really wanted to come see the studio." I'm like, okay. And they just kind of hung out the rest
Hey,
of the
look,
day.
I'll give him-
I'm not complaining. I like his presence.
I'll
do
give
too.
him credit for this. He came up to me and introduced himself because he knew I had no idea
Oh,
who he
yeah.
was.
No, Paul has no idea of anyone.
So let's just go ahead and tell the story because it's never going to see the light of day with the video that we taped with Sleepy Danny. How long ago was this? March of last year?
This was he knows because he had a big St. Patty's Day celebration that
So
night, I
he's
think.
introduced himself to you before, Paul.
All brief show.
No.
As a
This was a bit we were doing
this was a
because we knew
bit
you wouldn't notice.
because you had met him prior, and we knew that you wouldn't remember him.
I knew I'd met him prior also.
So
but
we introduced
not
him
memorable.
as a potential intern candidate, and we had
That's great.
and I forgot where he was going to school, but maybe it was Vandy.
was it our fantasy football draft night?
I think that might have
you
been it.
attended.
Oh, that's so
And
smart.
so we
this would
had
have
it.
been
We had the
August.
footage of this, and for all I know, Savage owns the rights to it.
that would have
but
been
the-
terrific. That was great
but
by you
the-
guys.
that was embargoed in the purchase.
So you were going to
That
do
was
a
their-
spot where you had me
Yeah, that was
That's
their
the one thing they wanted to keep.
greeting a full-time
that was their
employee
intellectual
as a,
property,
Yeah,
I think. So they kept
right.
it.
as a potential intern candidate.
Yeah.
You could do that with like 15 people.
We've got Danny on headset now.
I think it's
believe.
actually being repurposed for totalfratmove.com.
You could do that with 40-year-old men who are with the company since the
Oh,
beginning.
Danny's on mic.
Yeah, Danny, how do you remember the story going?
I remember.
Are you upset that I'm telling this to Paul?
No,
Because
this is great.
I've never even seen the
This is
video
great
from
content.
this.
No. I know the footage went down with Lance. I remember I told Paul I was a finance student at Vanderbilt, and I was really a big fan of the show and interested in. Now that I think about finance, wouldn't have made sense. But I remember Paul just did not seem like he wanted to hire me as an intern.
Yeah, where was this? Where were we? In the arcade room?
Yeah, in the arcade room.
So this was the fantasy football draft.
Yeah, I
that's the night.
I
And what
remember-
name did we go with?
Todd Cobell.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I believe that was it. But I remember specifically, Paul was like, yeah, we'll talk about it. And I remember walking away kind of disappointed. I was like, I didn't get the internship. And I was like, wait, I work here already.
but what
Did
we
I
did,
say? Did you guys ask me anything about it?
No.
well,
what
like,
we-
if you remember, you were getting legitimately worked up that Danny was like, he fell asleep one time. So we were going on air, like we would joke about it, and you were getting really mad. So we thought this will be funny if we, slide Danny in, and then you get to know him and like him, and then the big reveal
But it
of
didn't take
this
off.
is Sleepy
This is
Danny.
Sleepy
But you didn't
Danny.
win me over.
It didn't take off.
Now
Yeah.
that I'm here, can I please
What
give
if you and I
the...
had been out, like, if we
Yeah.
hit it off and we were out drinking beers and everything?
Yeah, we'd be sleeping.
Yeah.
Can I please give the context, the backstory to that incident where I first
Oh,
became Sleeping
sure.
Danny?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me close my laptop. So I guess I'm not working. So,
Yeah, that's nothing new.
big plot twist. I wasn't actually sleeping.
You were
Oh,
pretending.
so you
to
were
sleep.
all. This is all a ruse.
This was all a ruse. I just went along with it because the true story is not that happy. I wish I was asleep. Really,
I'm
I
sure
had
you do.
I had gotten dumped the night before by my girlfriend, and I had my head down
Can the
on
band
the table.
begin the violins? Can you guys play some violins in the background?
Okay.
I had gotten dumped, and then Lance came in, thought I was asleep, took a picture. So I'm already having a bad day. Later on the show, I tune into 360. Everyone's roasting me. Paul says, you suck. All of that. Best day of my life.
I want to at least say that on the show I brought up, like, if you can fall asleep. I was trying to take your back and have your back on this, because if you can fall asleep and still keep your job the next day, to me, based on the amount of people that we had and had just hired, I thought, man, this guy must be really good at his job.
So I was shocked because I didn't think anybody could be that good at their job.
Anything you'd like to say to this woman who dumped you right now? Now that you've got the microphone? Because she made a huge mistake.
It's not your current relationship.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not.
It's not my current relationship.
I didn't know if you guys got back together.
All
I didn't know
right,
what the deal was.
a message to my ex.
Yes.
The edited version.
I miss you, please. Come back. I have not slept in a year and a half.
My new girlfriend
That's not
sucks.
what we think. We think you're sleeping every day.
Yes.
I've gotten no further reports on your sleeping.
Yeah, I'm not sleeping.
I think that you're sleeping
when
all
my
the time.
eyes are closed, I'm remembering the relationship.
Oh.
That's what. When you see me like this, I'm back there a year and a half ago.
So tell the people what you do.
Well, no. You don't have to tell the people. Tell Paul what you do, because he has no idea.
We know what you do, but inform Paul what it is you do.
And let me be clear on the front end. I don't care.
That's fine.
But I still want to hear.
I am the senior video editor for Outkick
Senior.
and all.
I love senior titles on groups of small. What do you work with? 4 people?
2. Anyways, I control.
So
everything.
who's the junior person?
Me on Tuesdays and Fridays. Today's Friday. But Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, senior status.
You're both senior and junior.
Exactly.
You're
Depending on the day,
you wear 2
He's
hats.
filling in for himself today.
Exactly.
That's why he's in studio.
Yeah, we're the senior hosts of Outkick 360.
What I love about the nickname Sleepy Danny is it's one of those that if we continue this 15, 20 years from now, Danny's going to move on to these huge jobs.
Right.
And everyone's just going to continue to call him Sleepy Danny. And we're going to look up and he's not even going to remember why he has the nickname. You're going to have to search back.
And he's going to fire us.
Yes. Well, at some point, for sure, we're going to actually ask for a job from him. Will probably be what's going to happen. And then Hutton and I will get one. Paul won't. Based on our treatment of Danny, we'll be the ones employed. Paul will probably retire by then.
I feel like Danny and I, here's the problem. I feel like Danny and I have made some progress right now on air, but if he comes in here next week, I won't know who he is.
Well, also, I felt like when we were talking
And that's
about
not specific to you. That's just people.
Well, when we were talking about the whole bit, I'm thinking,
I'm
man,
not even paying
Paul's going to
attention.
like you because you're from Connecticut. You know, when we found out he's from Connecticut, I'm thinking, oh, you guys are going to have common ground, the northeastern roots.
See, I don't think he played up Connecticut.
And then and then it still didn't work. I mean, you met the guy and it was just nothing.
I don't think he played up Connecticut.
Well, the funniest part of the funniest part of the night, though, is you had clearly met him previous to this, and so the cameras would come back over to us. Lance would bring the cameras back over to us, and we would be talking with Danny about how the conversation would go and what we thought, you would say versus what you ended up saying. We were trying to figure out where he's from, the background, all this, and then we're going to try to mash up all this together. But
just like the bagel skit that cost me my tooth, it went nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there's this archive of footage, behind-the-scenes footage,
we have a half-hour
from the early
special.
days of Outkick 360 that is just in some incubator in Lance Lee's home somewhere.
But I
he
think
probably
we could
has all this.
continue
He's going to
this.
turn into a documentary at some point.
I mean, depending on how willing he is to mess with that beard, turn it into a mustache, turn it into clean shaven, grow it back. We could do this 6 or 8 more times, and I wouldn't know who you are.
I remember specifically that night. I told you I was a freshman in college or something like that, and Paul, you said you look a little old to be a freshman.
So I was perceptive at least. And who knows how many of those blackberry lemonades I had. But I was trying.
It was early. It was
this
early
is
in the night when
important.
this happened. You were
I
fun.
was trying to entertain the
was
people
early. We
that
had to
were
be
in
on
the
camera,
league.
too.
Yeah.
Who were in the league. So,
all your
male
focus is on-
interns at that time are not my primary concern.
Only participants in the league.
Participants in the league, and I was in charge of the league
This was
year,
not
so
an
you
intern
remember,
gathering night. This was an
right.
entertainment
And you
league
remember
night.
I was in charge of the league this year. You guys were buried in other stuff. I took on the league, so I really needed to focus on people in the league. And that's what I was doing. I issue no apologies here.
Danny, great job.
It would have been great stuff if we saw it all the way through. It would have been classic.
Hey, real quick before you take the headset off, what is a July 4th celebration like for Sleepy Danny.
Well, we have the day off, so I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
Hey,
Are you into the fireworks or no?
keep him awake.
Yeah. Just at a certain time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, he's got a little Patrick
Gotcha.
Dempsey in him. Maybe that's how I could remember him.
McDreamy?
Oh, can I real quick? So
Slight.
the last time we had Danny on, or at least on camera.
Are you coming on to Danny?
No. We
Trying to
this happened
come up
literally
with a device,
yesterday.
a memory device.
Literally yesterday. I'm scrolling through Instagram and I'm like, who is this person and why am I following them? It's Danny's mom, and I.
By the way,
That's
and
much
I
more
never-
concerning than anything I've done.
We
or
have
said.
we have had zero communication since Daddy found out we were communicating about him.
Yep. About him.
But I was scrolling through and I finally realized, like, oh, this is Danny's mom, and I
Why
just
are
kept
we
going.
following?
But you were on my mind yesterday as well.
Well, I'm more so
as well
interested.
as your mom.
Yeah, I'm more so interested on why you follow my girlfriend as well on Instagram.
Oh, because we met her.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
He follows
yeah,
everyone
that's
he
right.
meets.
Yeah,
but why?
you haven't.
the way,
But you haven't met my mother.
why are you
No, but
following her?
she followed me and DM'd me. She slid up into my DMs.
Oh,
Danny,
Yeah.
you're, every time, I rarely go to Facebook. When I do, the friend suggestions, your mom is my top friend suggestion. Every time.
Yet
And
he's
I've yet
resisted
to-
the temptation.
I've yet to click add friend because every time I see Danny's face before I do it, I'm like, not going to do it. Not going to add her as a friend.
Do it.
Hey, this was an excellent. This was an
I have your
excellent segment. Good night.
I have your blessing.
love
Seriously,
this.
though, why are you here? Is there a reason you just want to show up? We're
He was
happy
told-
to have you.
He,
It's-
he
this
explained
is
that. He
no
was
resentment.
told. He was told to be here based
Okay.
on.
I just
Who
wanted to
told
see
you?
the
some
new
things going on.
studio.
No.
But who told you?
Nobody. I'm the senior video editor. I can. If
you
I
can
get.
do
I
what you
edit
want?
where I want to
Yeah.
As
edit.
it goes, as
It's
he
a senior
pleases.
decision.
Oh wait, it's Friday. I'm a junior. Shoot.
Look now,
Sleepy Danny has been our
Danny,
guest.
you have an audience outside here at 6 and Peabody, all trying to figure out, is this Patrick Dempsey?
And is he
That's what
single?
they're asking themselves right now.
Either Patrick
And is he
Dempsey or
awake?
Scott Speedman. That's what I usually get.
That's another good one. Scott Speedman.
Hey, that's a good appearance.
Sleepy
Good job by you,
Danny, the man.
whoever you are.
Coming up, we've got Josh Pate.
That was a good idea by you guys with the intern thing.
It just never popped. We were ready for it to go. but
Next
never
thing we
popped.
know, you'll have people, interns counting how many pieces of the candy I eat.
Yep. Always
Another
something.
classic.
We haven't done that in a while either.
Well, I'm not eating that stuff right now, so no success. Count
No-
how many
no
donuts.
candy, no
Hey,
donuts.
there's donuts in there. Follow him in there and see how many he eats.
Yeah. Josh Pate joins us next. We get back to the biggest headline going into the July 4th weekend, which is USC UCLA headed to the Big Ten and all of the fallout. He was in LA yesterday as this news broke at the Elite 11. We'll talk with Pate State next on Outkick 360. Outkick 360 across the Outkick network. Our next guest, Josh Pate, deserves some congratulations. The hard work and effort paying off. 100,000 subscribers.
Boom.
To the YouTube channel. Late Kick, having massive success. And, I mean, he even times it up perfectly where Elite 11 is going on. He's live in the end zone as all of the craziness breaks across college football yesterday with Pac-12 and USC-UCLA headed to the Big Ten. Josh Pate of 24/7 Sports joins us on Outkick 360. Josh, great to have you back on, man.
Yeah, when people asked yesterday, did you know? I mean, you've never taken the show to LA. Did you know something was coming? I don't want to lie, so I just did wink. You wink. You give a lot of body language in absence of any words. Yeah, that was about the most happy confluence of events in my career. So years from now, the history books will just remember right place, right time.
So from the SEC perspective, Josh, I find it fascinating from this perspective. I immediately think, Greg Sankey and the SEC, they're not in this to be equals with anyone. Their response is to dominate. So if the Big Ten feels like they scored a big victory and got close to even with the SEC with this move, they're not just going to sit back and say, okay, well, we did our thing, they did their thing, and we're done now. I feel like the immediate response is, and maybe it's already been in the works, let's go find more and make sure that we're still at the top of the food chain. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, so I agree with that. And I don't even know if that's how Sankey wants to operate. I just think he knows it's how he has to operate. For instance, around this time last year, when they went and they got OU in Texas, I think I was on this show, and a lot of people just around the country were saying, why can't the SEC just leave good enough alone? Why do you have to go gobble up all of college football and become this big, massive, like Independence Day spaceship over the world of the sport? And now I think you look back and you realize, oh, you mean they weren't the only ones that were going to be making moves. Oh, you mean behind the curtain, they kind of understood there were multiple wheels turning, and there were multiple folks up north that were looking to make survival moves as well. So they may have moved proactively, but they may have moved out of their own sense of a need for survival. And you're right, they don't want to survive alone. They want to be supreme. They want to be the dominant force in the landscape of the sport. But I think it makes a little more sense now. And I think it would also be, like you said, foolish to think, okay, 16 there, 16 here, we're done. No way now.
How does the ACC survive? The discussion has been about the Big 12 last year. Now it's about the Pac-12. If we look to the ACC, how do they make sure that they stay afloat?
Staying afloat, if we're speaking within the context of being on par or in the same league, so to speak, with the entities that are now going to be the Big Ten and the SEC, my short answer to you is I don't know. Because you see, I don't personally see a world where the Clemsons and the FSUs and the Miamis are remaining in that conference long term. And if we saw it before yesterday, to me, that went up in smoke. So I would say the same thing about the Pac-12. The credit that I'll give the ACC is they'll have some fight in them. Like when I was out in LA yesterday, everybody's immediate reaction was, okay, there goes the Pac-12. I was speaking with people, I kid you not, inside the league. They are drawing paychecks from the Pac-12 and saying, all right, we're done. So the ACC will fight. I don't know. I mean, the calls will come. The calls are going to come to FSU. They're going to come to Clemson. And I'll tell you a quote I got from someone yesterday that will be involved in those decisions. I asked them, what about that grant of rights deal? The one that runs through like the year 3000 that you guys are going to have to pay a lot of money to get out of. And their exact quote back was, look, we'll just figure it out in court. But that to me, when I think about those dollar signs, that's like a brick wall. To them, it's just a speed bump at this point financially.
I think it's 2036 is the grant of rights,
Yeah.
or 2036 or 37 for the ACC. And this move by the Big Ten, Josh, when it happened, I remember a year ago when we had you on, and the Big Ten having all these grand statements about, there are these independent actors out there that are damaging the good of football and the good of the sport. And we're not going to be that. And they form the alliance, and we're looking out for what's best for the sport and everything else. And this happened yesterday, and I think the Big Ten can no longer be self-righteous about anything. I have no issue with the move they made, but they also removed any ability to act like they're better than the SEC in any way.
I mean, I think you could have started making those jokes a while back. I think that there were at one point several more Big Ten institutions involved in ongoing scandal than there were in the South. So I've always kind of looked at it through that lens. I understand there's an image that you want to portray, and it's all marketing and focus groups meet and do this and that. I get that. Man, at the end of the day, everybody's moving for the same reason. They want to cash the biggest paycheck, and it doesn't sound cool if you step to a podium and say that. So we got to step to a podium and say, this conference aligns with our academic vision and our institutions overall, whatever. It's about, because here's what I can tell you. I'll make a bold prediction for you. I guarantee you we're not going to see a program change conferences and take less money per year guaranteed to exhibit those characteristics and align with those values. Everybody's doing it for the same reason. Everyone gets that. So when a man in a suit that costs more money than my entire wardrobe steps to a podium and starts to try and tell me why these things are really happening, I just turn the volume down at this point.
He's the host of Late Kick Live. Josh Pate with us on Outkick 360.
So I've seen two pair move. It seems to me the next biggest single entity somebody would want is Notre Dame. If it has to be in pairs, Notre Dame and X. It wouldn't much matter who the X is. What's next for Notre Dame in your eyes?
I feel Big Ten. Talked to a couple of folks yesterday who feel pretty strongly it's going to be Big Ten. Now, it's got to be very nice to be Notre Dame because you're one of the only entities out there whose timetable matters, and you can make a conference wait on you. And that kind of seems to be what's happening right now. Notre Dame to the Big Ten would not surprise me. I had Brady Quinn on the show last night, and I asked him, hey, what are you guys saying behind the scenes? What are you talking about behind the scenes? And he said, yeah, like if we're going to move, we think it's going to be the Big Ten, yet they are aligned with the ACC right now. So I think Notre Dame's eventually going to do something. I don't think they want to do it immediately because I don't think they want to make it look like they had their hand forced, to be honest with you. It may matter to them. But I'll tell you some others. Clemson, for example, is one of them. I always thought that if/when conference realignment happened again, and if Clemson moved, I just always felt like the SEC was this perfect marriage. They feel so SEC. And yet last night I'm sitting in LAX and I get a person who's well-placed on this stuff telling me, you need to maybe pump the brakes on just assuming that. Like there are conversations happening with folks at Clemson and folks in the Big Ten. Now, you tell me that feels like a fit, and I'll tell you that's the first time I've ever felt that way. But yet I think that the Big Ten and the SEC are both in a place now where they're almost beyond the old school way of thinking. And the old school way of thinking in this stuff was, let's go grab as many media markets. Let's get a presence in as many big markets as we can. I think they feel like both of their brands have elevated to the point where they have saturated the college football national market enough to where now let's not worry so much about media markets. Let's go find and marry with brands and programs and schools that most fit how we want to exhibit ourselves. And right now, the Big Ten is trying to shift away from that Midwestern Conference look and feel to a national look and feel. Well, what better way to do that than go get Southern Cal one day and then go get, one of the superpowers on the East Coast the next day. And if you can marry that up with Notre Dame, that's just all the better.
And going back to the Notre Dame aspect of this, Josh, if the ACC if Jim Phillips was able to somehow strike a deal to get them to officially join the ACC and not just play a 5-game schedule with them each year, that would be a power broker move, much like we've seen with the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't think there's another way that they can not just stay afloat, but to be a part of a Power 3 discussion. Right now, it's a Power 2. And if we're going to really discuss a Power 3, it would be Notre Dame to the ACC. That's the only move I think they can make that brings them up a notch.
I agree with you. My big question yesterday when it first broke and we were doing all our coverage was, is this just a foregone conclusion that we're in a 2 super conference inevitable world now? And my immediate thought is always married to what the current size of the conferences are. And that's 16, I guess, for the Big Ten and SEC. And I know that there are enough viable brands out there to form a 3rd super conference of equal or at least comparable size. And FSU, Clemson, Notre Dame, however that shook out, that would be how you make that up. Oregon on the West Coast. But if we're going to expand beyond that, then obviously that's a moot point. I think you're right, though. If the ACC wants to fight here, And if they want to maintain their status and seat at the table, that is a non-starter. If you don't have Notre Dame involved there, I think that's a non-starter at this point. So that's very much a survival move. But it goes back to emphasizing the point that Notre Dame does not have to do anything in a hurry. Right. They can take a long vacation weekend if they want. They don't have to make any calls today. They can do it on their schedule.
So, Josh, first glance, if the SEC, let's say, were to add 4 teams, 4 that immediate come to mind, culturally, geographically, football-wise: Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech. I would put North Carolina ahead of Virginia Tech from a value standpoint of what you're getting with the brand North Carolina. But there's a lot of talk about North Carolina, Virginia. Well, their values are more in line with the Big Ten as academic institutions. Do you buy the academic angle having anything to do with this? And what do you think about the 4 programs I threw out there for the SEC?
I'm with you now, but you and I are probably thinking the same way. We just care about what we're going to see on Saturday. And as you mentioned, and as we well know, yeah, there are other elements of this in the room, but like, remember, for example, back when A&M and Missouri came to the SEC in 2012 or whenever that was, we asked the same question then. Are we done? Are we going to see more expansion here? And those same programs were on the table. And anytime North Carolina got thrown out there, you know, someone straightened up that sweater vest and tied that bow tie and said, absolutely not. We're not hanging out with you heathens. Like, we care about class. We're here Monday through Friday as well. I think that sentiment would still be there. I just think the world has changed so radically. When you're talking about the difference in potentially hundreds of millions of dollars for your institution over the course of a few years, how much do you care about academics? And if we're talking about a world in the future, keep in mind, guys, we're talking about a world in the future, not in the rearview mirror, but in the windshield. You're looking down the road. College athletics looks totally detached from the academic vestige that is your university anyway. How much are you really going to allow yourself to be aligned with, I guess, the values that have always defined your decision making? I think there will be some radical alteration, for example, maybe with the North Carolinas of the world, when it comes to how you are making decisions down the road, as opposed to maybe how you said you would have made decisions in the past.
Not looking at this from the nostalgic angle or the past is better angle at all here, but from the business of college football. Business is good right now in the world we live in, Josh. For our show, your show, we're talking college football, we're winning. Long term, is it better business for the power conferences to turn into a super conference? Is it better business that 2 years from now we're probably no longer looking at a Power 5 college football landscape and it's more likely a Power 2 or Power 3? Or do you think we get some watered-down professional version that fans are not clamoring enough about because they like the college angle that they currently live in? Or does it matter?
It matters. I think anyone who claims they have a definitive answer on that is kidding themselves a little bit. We woke up yesterday morning not knowing what that day was going to bring. So how do we know what 5 years from now is going to bring? I think one of the smartest things you can ever learn to do in this space is just say, I don't know. I have no clue. Like, I agree. I was talking to someone about this earlier. I was talking to one of our executives here about this earlier at CBS. And they were saying, oh, brother, this is going to be so good for you. You'll have such a financial windfall off this. I understand that. But at the same time, man, I grew up loving college football. I didn't grow up loving the idea of making a lot of money talking college football. It's a blessing to be able to do that. I get that, man. It's a dream job to be able to do that. But I want to be passionate about the product that we're covering. And I was passionate growing up about college football because it looked different than the Sunday product that I watched. I love the territoriality. I love the regionality. I love that when I said West Coast football, it meant something different than Southern football. It meant something different than Midwestern football. I don't want to, homogenize our product on Saturday to the point where it's just like a preview, a tee-up, if you will, of what you're going to get 24 hours later. I don't like that, or at least I don't think I'll like that. And I guess I can just cross my fingers and hope I'm wrong.
You know, and what's fascinating about it is we can't predict where we're headed 2-3 years from now in the landscape or who's joining which conference next. But Apple and Amazon and CBS and Fox and NBC and ESPN. ESPN's got a big, spoon that they're stirring here. They're all saying this is better for business. That's what I'm really intrigued by. Is they're the ones holding the check, and they're the ones that everyone's battling for to make sure that they get in on that next massive television contract, which are all expiring right now.
You know what? One of the biggest, kind of like a million people text me right now. Let's hit ignore on all that. One of the biggest tricks, and I don't know how they did it, but one of the biggest tricks that executives, sort of the high-level mustache crowd, ever pulled off in this game was convincing the mass college football public that them making more money is growth that you should support, and them having a higher television number on Saturday is growth that you should support. You guys probably hear it just like I do. Sure. I'll look in my mentions, or maybe you take calls, and you have just a normal fan from Murfreesboro who should care nothing about this stuff call in and say, well, you got to get higher ratings, you got to get a higher television and media rights deal. It doesn't impact you. It impacts me, and I care about it less than some people that it doesn't impact. I don't get how, I don't understand how the wool got pulled over so many eyes to think that sacrificing everything you've grown up loving about the sport is worth it because 0.01% of the power brokers in the sport, whose names you'll never know, are going to line their pockets with a new landscape of your sport. It should be your sport, not their sport. I don't get that. Someone can explain that to me.
Of these four giant teams on the move, obviously Lincoln Riley being with USC is a big deal, but Arch Manning is the biggest deal. Has Texas done what's expected since Arch Manning has got there, or even bigger than what's expected? And what do you expect of that program with him and as it comes into the SEC?
It is, to me, it's the most intriguing program to watch in the country right now. And I know it's not the first time we've said that about Texas, but to go back to Arch Manning, the reason that was such a massive story, even within the more hardcore recruiting lane of college football, was not just that he's going to Texas. We knew what was about to come because you get feedback and you get kids telling you, essentially, I'm waiting to see what that Manning kid does. Well, he commits to Texas, and we put out a graphic at 24/7 earlier today of all the dominoes that have fallen just in the last week or so since he committed. It is such a chain reaction. When you get a 5-star level quarterback and then his last name's Manning, it's a chain reaction because you know everyone's going to want to play with him. And that's just traditional recruiting, guys. Think about what Texas is going to be able to do in the transfer portal. When you've got established names elsewhere who want to kind of sync up, if they win 8 or 9 games this fall, they don't need to win the Big 12. They don't need to make the playoff. They won 5 games last year. If they improve by 3 or 4 games, and then everybody's able to sell, hey, we're on the right track. Look, we've turned this thing around. Come be a part of this. And they've recruited really good all of a sudden on the offensive line. And they're recruiting line of scrimmage a whole lot better than they ever did under the previous couple staffs. That, to me, is a recipe for a really interesting next few years in Austin, Texas. But then you got the other side of the coin. I know we got Texas haters listening to the show right now who say, what has Steve Sarkisian ever proven? Well, the answer is, as a head coach, not much. Like, I'm not pushing back on that. It's all potential right now. That's what makes it fun.
So current SEC right now, and I look at the conference and I can segment it into different groups of, these are the powerhouses. These are the doormats. These are the teams just vying to get into a bowl game. These are the contenders to be the next to knock the powerhouses off the block. And then I look at 2 programs, one East and one West, and I put them right now as the ultimate wild card in that I know both of their identities, but I don't know where to place them in the conference now and moving forward. One East and one West. I want to start in the West. Arkansas. I know who Arkansas is under Sam Pittman, but in this new NIL era where they're going to have some advantages in the way he's been able to recruit, where are they ultimately in the construct of the conference and their level to compete at the top of it?
So this will be a very important year for them to define that, because I was talking to some of these kids at Elite 11. There's a buzz around Arkansas I've never witnessed before. I'm talking about on the recruiting trail now. That Arkansas offer is a coveted thing to get. And it used to be, let's just be real about it. In the SEC, it used to be the backup option if Nick Saban didn't want you, or even if like Ed Orgeron or Les Miles in the past didn't want you. All right, I want to stay in the South. Kirby doesn't have an offer for me. Nick doesn't have it. I'll go to Arkansas and I'll play against them. Now they're taking some kids and they're getting commitments from some kids that had offers elsewhere. And then they've also built this unique thing up there. It's kind of why I'm rooting for Shane Beamer, because I would love to see as many of these unique little bubble cultures as possible pop up. What Sam Pittman's doing in Arkansas probably only works at Arkansas. He probably only really works at Arkansas. That's great. I love that about college football. It's one thing that's unique about the sport. Kids are picking up on that. And what they just did in the transfer portal is a good indication. They're not going to get all the guys on their first swing. They will be a very, very high-level portal program. And if they can marry that, and if they can get quarterback right, if they can get quarterbacks to be attracted to Fayetteville, and they've got one right now that they can sell for one more year in KJ Jefferson. If they can do that, there's nothing that says they can't be competitive with maybe not Bama every year, but A&M, LSU. They can compete with those teams if they strike the balance they have this last kind of cycle and a half.
So the other X Factor program, this one in the East, got a lot of NIL advantages. We're seeing some of that early on. I know what they want to be from an identity standpoint. Don't know where they are ultimately in the conference. That's Tennessee under Josh Heupel right now. What do you think of them moving forward, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say this about every team, but it's an important year for Tennessee too, I guess. They overachieved last year record-wise. But there was a lot of inconsistency. They were a fast start team. There was a lot of inconsistency in second half. I think when you look at Hendon Hooker's stat line, it would excite you if you're one of those people who automatically believes, well, okay, you automatically just progress. And when you come back to school for another year and your entire coaching staff's intact for another year, automatic progression. Sometimes it works that way. Sometimes it doesn't. What I'm more interested to see is them in recruiting too, because you can out scheme your way to victories every now and then in this conference. It doesn't happen. You don't string that together. Brian Harsin may have the same problem at Auburn. You can be the greatest tactician in the world. You ask Dan Mullen how that turns out. You've eventually got to have the horses. It's a talent acquisition business. Tennessee's going to have to establish themselves in that market as well. The way to do that is to keep scoring points like they did last year, but they've got to put a more consistent product on the field. Having said that, though, it's not a critical thing I'm saying. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were last year. And remember the attrition they had going into last year. I got a bug in here. So it was a miracle that they made a bowl game. They had it ripped from their clutches by a team not named Purdue, but it was a miracle they were there. If they build on that, you'll absolutely see a windfall on the recruiting trail. But unlike, Mario Cristobal going to Miami, he already has a reputation. Heupel has to build and earn his reputation, I think, at the Power 5 level.
Final thing on the way out, Josh Pate has been our guest. Most intriguing Elite 11 quarterback you saw or spoke with this past week?
I would say Jackson Arnold. I would say the kid who brought home the MVP award, because he came in there and he was talked about now, but he wasn't mentioned in the same breath as like Nico, who wasn't there, or Arch Manning, who wasn't there, or Malachi Nelson, the USC commit. And he's not demonstrative. He just has this little quiet confidence. He's from Sewanee, Georgia, I think. And I talked to him a couple times, and he looks you straight in your eye, gives you straight answers, not braggadocious at all, but just, hey, I think I can compete here, especially after night one. He told me, and I came in thinking I could compete. I think I can win this thing now. And he ends up going on to win it. He's an Oklahoma commit, very active in recruiting their class. If you had $1 million question about Brent Venables at Oklahoma, wouldn't it be that? Wouldn't it be, can they still attract high-level offensive talent like they did under Lincoln Riley? No one doubts defensively what they'll be. It's the other side of the ball. And if what I saw briefly in L.A. was any indication, I think they're in pretty good hands.
100K and counting. Josh Pate, Pate State, Late Kick Live is the show. Follow that show, and you can watch it live on YouTube. Appreciate you as always, Josh. Always fantastic insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
I appreciate you having me, guys.
There's Josh Pate, who has been out in California, and now he's back, and he's crushing it. Great week to be out there for Elite 11, and I've always wondered what the inner workings are like that, or like with that, because we see the Dilfer reality show as they would put that together, but behind the scenes when the cameras are not rolling and you're not having the practices, the whole event behind it and the connections made. Got to be fascinating.
I'm willing to guess it's boring unless you have the right access to what's going on. Because if not, it's just, you're standing around a high school or small college stadium watching guys throw a football, from the sidelines. But if you can get inside of some of the meetings and training sessions that are going on, that would be pretty cool.
Hit us up on Twitter at Outkick 360. We head into the fourth as we return on Outkick 360. Happy birthday, America. July 4th weekend is here. There's always an energy to any weekend.
And happy birthday, Tom Cruise.
And Tom Cruise.
Oh,
There's always an energy going into a weekend where you've got the Monday following to point to the long weekend. There is a different vibe whenever you've got the 4th falling on a Monday.
I don't want to be a beggar that's trying to be a chooser on
Go ahead.
this.
Go ahead.
But, man, I really wish that the 4th had a day after it because we are having the big 4th celebration on the Monday. So I wish it was like the buffer, right? I wish we had a Sunday night big celebration, Monday to recover, and then come back.
Well, what if the 4th was a Tuesday or a Thursday? Would we get a 4-day
next
weekend
day?
out of it?
I don't think so.
We conceivably could. Would most people?
I don't know. I mean,
I'm
now,
going to be honest. I feel like we work more than most people.
Yeah.
Everyone
that's
I know
why
is
we should
takes
get-
like 3 weeks off at a time.
That's
or
why-
is at home constantly.
That's why I think Fox might give us a 4-day
I mean,
weekend.
I
out of it.
wouldn't want Monday off if it's the 3rd based on the college football and NFL headlines right now. I mean, this
But
is
the
a
thing is-
layup time for us.
Well,
The thing is, we've gone through this
I like the
before
buffer.
on radio. The thing is that people's viewing or listening habits, most people on that 4-day weekend would not be working that day and would not be in their usual listening habits. I think our numbers would be
Well,
down.
but I mean, if we're talking inside baseball here, local radio goes to shows like ours because they rely on us to have live programming on days where there's not a national holiday. So, I mean, no longer are we just directing our content to one audience and going to Fox Sports Radio on July 3rd if we so choose to have noon to 3 off.
Yeah. I think it should be I think I look forward to it more when it's on a Tuesday or a Thursday because I think it turns into a 4-day weekend, which obviously I enjoy even more than a 3-day weekend. The 4 is better than 3.
The Saturday, Sunday, Monday aspect, though, where you've got there's a little drive to it. Plus, you can plan going into the weekend all of the cookouts. Like where I'm, the rural town of Morrison, Tennessee, they have their own firework display. Then you can go to McMinnville the next night and have your firework display. You can drive up to Murfreesboro. You could go all the way to Nashville for the July 4th celebration as well for 3 nights of this if you so choose. And then you've got all the banging and clanging in the neighborhood as well for the next week and a half here in Tennessee.
Well, that's the one that I feel like both of my daughters are deep sleepers, so it's not going to be a huge issue. But when the fireworks, it doesn't get dark till later. And I'm not putting them to bed. We're not putting them to bed till probably after dark now, 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. But I just don't want a situation where it's like,
10:30.
all right, yeah, now, I can't do what I want to at 10:30 at night. And I'm
what would that
guarantee
be?
What I don't want to do at 10:30 at night is parent.
Yeah.
I don't want to parent.
We're loaded. We're going to see some friends tonight. We're going to Minions at noon tomorrow. We're going to Sounds tomorrow night.
You have your tickets for Minions?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to NSC on Sunday night.
It's going to be a great sports weekend all the way around.
I may see you at Minions tomorrow, Paul. That's where we're going.
You coming to Cool Springs?
No.
Well, we sure as hell ain't going to Mount Juliet.
No, we're not. I don't think we're going to be there. We'll be at a theater close by. Theater.
Oh,
this is a great weekend to launch a movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
Watch Top Gun Maverick be the top movie again this weekend. They tied the weekend Elvis came out. They were both $30.5 million.
We should have asked Bobby if he was going to take his parents to see Top Gun Maverick for like the 5th consecutive week that he's watched the film in the theater.
Just finding more people to.
Hey, we talked about Elvis. I watched an interview with Austin Butler, who played Elvis, on Jimmy Fallon, and he almost got offended when Jimmy said, "And you sang like you sang." He's like, "Yeah, I sang." Remember we talked about?
He didn't sing the whole
He
thing.
sang, but they blended the actual vocals in with his vocals.
Yeah, well, then he shouldn't be so proclaiming that he sang.
Well, he did sing the early
Gary
songs.
Busey sang.
He did sing the
Buddy
early
Holly
songs
song.
in full.
Yeah, but
from
you
the
can't say
50s.
I sang when some of it's blended with actual
Well,
Elvis.
I don't want to represent him as a jerk because he was a very shy, grateful guy. In the interview, was almost just in awe that he was allowed to do it, and he does a great job.
But he was a jerk.
But everybody kind of laughed. No, everybody laughed when he's like, "Did you know Fallon's just a big fan?" Or he's like, "I mean, you sang the songs," and he kind of responded, "Yeah, I did. I was singing." kind of like that, and everybody laughed. So
he kind of lied.
He sang. I mean, he did sing.
But Elvis sang too, which
they
he left
blended
out.
the vocals with Elvis's vocals.
That's a key.
But he also,
element.
it's key to note, there are 3 or 4 songs to start the movie that's Austin Butler solely. So I'll take
These are
it.
specifics. He should have offered a lot more specifics.
Go see the film.
We'll offer specifics on Minions.
Let Freedom
on
sing
Tuesday.
this weekend.
I'll have a full breakdown of Minions, The Rise of Gru.
We will.
Yes.
Follow us on socials. Outkick 360 is where you can find us. Download the podcast, and we are back at it on Tuesday, live across the Outkick network.
And don't block the box. Kindly lock your locks. Thank you.